The following is an audio rendering of Beowulf. Author unknown. This recording is the sole property of Hubbub and is protected by copyright. Prelude of the founder of the Danish house. Lo, praise of the prowess of people kings, of spear-armed Danes, and days long sped, we have heard, and what honor the Athelings won, off Scyld and Skifling from squadroned foes. From many a tribe the mead bench tore, awing the earls. Since erst he lay friendless, a foundling, fate repaid him, for he waxed under Vulcan, in wealth he throve, till before him the folk, both far and near, who house by the whale path heard his mandate, gave him gifts, a good king he. To him an heir was afterward born, a son in his halls, whom heaven sent to favor the folk, feeling their woe, that erst they had lacked an earl for leader. So long a while the Lord endowed him, the wielder of wonder, with world's renown. Famed was this Beowulf, far flew the boast of him, son of Scyld in the Scandian lands. So becomes it a youth to quit him well with his father's friends, by fee and gift, that to aid him aged and after days, come warriors willing should war draw nigh. Liegemen loyal, by lauded deeds shall an earl have honor in every clan. Forth he fared at the fated moment, sturdy Scyld, to the shelter of God. Then they bore him over to ocean's billow, loving clansmen, as late he charged them, while wielded words the winsome Scyld, the leader beloved, who long had ruled. In the roadstead rocked a right dight vessel, ice-flecked, outbound Atheling barge. There laid they down their darling lord, on the breast of the boat, the breaker of rings. By the mast, the mighty one, many a treasure fetched from far was freighted with him. No ship have I known so nobly dight, with weapons of war and weeds of battle, with breastplate and blade on his bosom lay. A heaped hoard that hence should go far o'er the flood with him floating away. No less these loaded the lordly gifts, thane's huge treasure, than those had done in the former time. Forth had sent him sole on the seas, a suckling child. High o'er his head they hoist the standard, a gold-wove banner. Let billows take him, gave him to ocean. Grave were their spirits, mournful their mood. No man is able to say and soothe, no son of the halls, no hero neath heaven, who harbored that freight. Chapter 1. Now Beowulf bode in the burg of the Scyldings, leader beloved, and long he ruled in fame with all folk, since his father had gone away from the world, till awoke an heir, haughty Hilfdene, who held through life, sage and sturdy, the Scyldings glad. Then, one after one, there woke to him, to the chieftain of clansmen, children four. Hrothgar, then Hrothgar, then Helga brave, and I heard that was queen, the Skilfing's helpmate dear. To Hrothgar was given such glory of war, such honor of combat, that all his kin obeyed him gladly, till great grew his band of youthful comrades. It came in his mind to bid his henchmen a hall uprear, a master mead house, mightier far than ever was seen by the sons of earth, and within it then, to old and young, he would all allot that the Lord had sent him, save only the land and the lives of his men. Wide, I heard, was the work commanded, for many a tribe this mid-earth round to fashion the folkstead. It fell as he ordered in rapid achievement, that ready it stood there, of halls the noblest. Hroth he named it, whose message had might in many a land. Not reckless of promise, the rings he dealt treasure at banquet. There towered the hall, high, garbled wide, the hot surge waiting of furious flame. Nor far was that day when father and son-in-law stood in feud for warfare and hatred that woke again. With envy and anger an evil spirit endured the dole in his dark abode, that he heard each day the din of revel high in the hall. There harps rang out, clear song of the singer. He sang who knew tales of the early time of man, how the Almighty made the earth fairest fields enfolded by water, set triumphant sun and moon, for a light to lighten the land dwellers, and braided bright the breast of earth, whose limbs and leaves made life for all of mortal beings that breathe and move. So lived the clansmen in cheer and revel, a winsome life, till one began to fashion evils. That field of hell, Grendel, this monster grim was called, March Reaver, mighty in moorland living, in fin and fastness, fief of the giants, the hapless wight a while had kept since the Creator his exile doomed. O kin of Cain, was the killing avenged by sovereign God for slaughtered Abel. Ill fared his feud, and far was he driven, for the slaughter's sake, from sight of men. Of Cain awoke all that woeful breed, Etons and elves and evil spirits, as well as the giants that warred with God, weary while, but their wage was paid them. Chapter 2. Went he forth to find at fall of night that haughty house, and heed wherever the ring-danes out-revelled to rest had gone. Found within it the atheling band asleep after feasting, and fearless of sorrow of human hardship. Unhallowed white, grim and greedy, he grasped betimes, wrathful, reckless from resting places, 30 of the thanes, and thence he rushed, fain of his fell spoil, faring homeward, laden with slaughter, his lair to seek. Then, at the dawning, as day was breaking, the might of Grendel to men was known. Then, after wassail was wail uplifted, loud moan in the morn. The mighty chief, atheling, excellent, unblithe sat, labored in woe for the loss of his thanes, when once had been traced the trail of the fiend, spirit accursed. Too cruel that sorrow, too long, too loathsome, not late the respite. With night returning, anew began ruthless murder. He recked no whit, firm in his guilt of the feud and crime. They were easy to find who elsewhere sought, in room remote their rest at night, bed in the bowers. When that bale was shown, was seen and soothed, with surest token, the Hal Thanes hate, such held themselves, far and fast, who the fiend outran. Thus ruled unrighteous and raged his fill once against all, until empty stood that lordly building, and long it bode so. 12 years tide the trouble he bore, sovereign of Scyldings, sorrows and plenty, boundless cares. There came unhidden tidings true of the tribes of men, in sorrowful songs how ceaselessly Grendel harassed Hrothgar, what hate he bore him, what murder and massacre many a year, feud unfading, refused consent to deal with any of the Daneland's earls, make pact of peace or compound for gold. Still less did the wise men ween to get great fee for the feud from his fiendish hands. But the evil one ambushed old and young, death-shadowed dark, and dogged them still, lured or lurked in the livelong night of misty moorlands. Men may say not where the haunts of these hell runes be. Such heaping of horrors, the hater of men, lonely roamer, wrought unceasing, harassings heavy, o'er Heorot he lorded, gold bright hall and gloomy nights, and ne'er could the prince approach his throne. 'Twas judgment of God, or have joy in his hall. Sore was the sorrow of Scyldings' friend, heart-rending misery. Many nobles sat assembled, and searched out counsel, how it were best for bold-hearted men against harassing terror to try their hand, whiles they vowed in their heathen fanes altar offerings, asked with words that the slayer of souls would succor give them for the pain of their people. Their practice this, their heathen hope 'twas hell they thought of in mood of their mind almighty they knew not, doomsmen of deeds the dreadful Lord, nor heaven's helmet heeded they ever, wielder of wonder. Woe for that man who in harm of hatred hales his soul to fiery embraces, nor favor nor change awaits he ever, but well for him that after death day may draw to his Lord, and friendship find in the Father's arms. Chapter 3. Thus seethed unceasing the son of Hilfdene, with one woe of these days, Not wisest men assuaged his sorrow, too sore the anguish, lowly and long, that lay on his folk, most baneful of burdens and bales of the night. This heard in his home Hygelaic's Thane, great among Geats, of Grendel's doings. He was the mightiest man of valor in that same day of this our life, stalwart and stately. A stout wave-walker he bade make ready. Yon battle king, said he, far o'er the swan road he fain would seek, the noble monarch who needed men. The prince's journey by prudent folk was little blamed, though they loved him dear. They wedded the hero and hailed good omens. And now the bold one from bands of Geats comrades chose, the keenest of warriors ere he could find. With 14 men the seawood he sought and sailor proved, let them on to the land's confines. Time had now flown, afloat was the ship, boat under bluff. On board they climbed, warriors ready, waves were churning sea with sand. The sailors bore on the breast of the bark of the bright array their mail and weapons. The men pushed off on its willing way, the well-braced craft. Then moved o'er the waters by might of the wind, that bark like a bird with breast of foam, till the season due on the second day. The curved prow such course had run that sailors now could see the land. Sea cliffs shining, steep high hills, headlands broad. Their haven was found, their journey ended. Up then quickly the Weders clansmen climbed ashore, anchored their seawood with armor clashing and gear of battle. God they thanked, or passing in peace o'er the paths of the sea. Now saw from the cliff a Scylding clansman, a warden that watched the water side, how they bore o'er the gangway glittering shields, war gear and readiness. Wonder seized him to know what manner of men they were. Straight to the strand his steel he rode. Hrothgar's henchman, with hand of might he shook his spear and spake in parley. Who are ye then, ye armed men, mailed folk, that yon mighty vessel have urged thus over the ocean ways, here o'er the waters? A warden I, sentinel set o'er the sea march here, lest any foe to the folks of Danes with harrying fleet should harm the land. No aliens ever at ease thus bore them, linden wielders, yet word of leave clearly ye lack from clansmen here, my folk's agreement. A greater ne'er saw I of warriors in world than is one of you, yon hero in harness. No henchman he worthied by weapons, if witness his features, his peerless presence. I pray you, though, tell your folk and home, lest hence ye fare suspect to wander your way as spies in Danish land. Now, dwellers afar, ocean travelers, take from me simple advice. The sooner, the better I hear of the country whence ye came. Chapter 4. To him the stateliest spake in answer, the warrior's leader his word hoard unlocked. We are by kin of the clan of Geats, and Hygelaic's own earth fellows we. To folk afar was my father known, noble atheling. Ex-Theo named. Full of winters he fared away, aged from earth. He is honored still through the width of the world by wise men all. To thy lord and liege and loyal mood we hasten hither, to Hilfden's son. People protector, be pleased to advise us. To that mighty one come we on mickle errand, to the lord of the Danes, nor deem I right that aught be hidden. We hear, thou knowest, if sooth it is, the saying of men that aimed the Scyldings a scathing monster. Dark Ildur in dusky nights shows terrific his rage unmatched, hatred and murder. To Hrothgar, I in greatness of soul would succor bring, so the wise and brave may worst his foes. If ever the end of ills is fated, of cruel contest, if cure shall follow, and the boiling care waves cooler grow, else ever afterward anguish days he shall suffer in sorrow while stands in place high on its hill that house unpeered. Astride his steed the stand word answered, clansman unquailing. The keen-souled thane must be skilled to sever and sunder duly words and works, if he well intends. I gather this band is graciously bent to the Scyldings' master. March then, bearing weapons and weeds the way I show you. I will bid my men your boat meanwhile to guard, for fear lest foemen come. Your new tarred ship by shore of ocean faithfully watching, till once again it waft o'er the waters those well-loved thanes, winding necked woods to elders' bounds, heroes such as the hest of fate shall succor and save from the shock of war. They bent them to march. The boat lay still, fettered by cable and fast at anchor, broad-bosomed ship. Then shone the boars over the cheek guard, chased with gold, keen on gleaming. Guard it kept o'er the man of war, as marched along heroes in haste, till the halls they saw, broad of gable and bright with gold. That was the fairest mid-folk of earth, of houses neath the heaven, where Hrothgar lived, and the gleam of it lightened o'er lands afar. The sturdy shieldsman showed that bright burg of the boldest, bade them go straightway thither. His steed then turned, hardy hero, and hailed them thus: "'Tis time that I fare from you. Father Almighty in grace and mercy guard you well, safe in your seekings. Seaward I go. 'Gainst hostile warriors hold my watch." Chapter 5. Stone bright the street, it showed the way to the crowd of clansmen. Corselets glistened, hand forged hard, on their harness bright the steel ring sang, as they strode along in mail of battle and marched to the hall. There, weary of ocean, the wall along they set their bucklers, their broad shields down, and bowed them to the bench. The breastplates clanged, war gear of men, their weapons stacked. Spears of the seafarers stood together. Gray-tipped ash, the iron band was worthily weaponed. A warrior proud asked of the heroes their home and kin. "Whence now bear ye burnished shields, harness gray the helmets grum, spears in multitude?" "Messenger I, Hrothgar's herald, heroes so many ne'er met I as strangers of mood so strong. 'Tis plain that for prowess not plunged into exile, for high-hearted valor Hrothgar ye seek." Him the sturdy in war bespake with words, proud Earl of the Wedders, answer made, hardy neath helmet: "Higliax, we fellows at Broad, I am Beowulf named. I am seeking to say to the son of Hilfdene this mission of mine, to thy master's lord, the doughty prince, if he deign at all grace that we greet him, the good one now." Wulfgar spake, the Windley's chieftain, who might of mind to many was known, his courage and counsel. "The king of Danes, the Scyldings' friend, I fain will tell, the breaker of rings, as the boon thou asked, the famed prince of thy faring hither, and swiftly after such answer bring, as the doughty monarch may deign to give. Hide then in haste to where Hrothgar sat, white-haired and old, his earls abound him, till the stout thane stood at the shoulder there of the Danish king. Good courtier he." Wulfgar spake to his winsome lord: "Hither have fared to thee far come men, o'er the paths of ocean, people of Greatland, and the stateliest there by his sturdy band is Beowulf named. This boon they seek, that they, my master, may with thee have speech at will, nor spurn their prayer to give them hearing, gracious Hrothgar. In weeds of the warrior worthy they, methinks of our liking, their leader most surely, a hero, that hither his henchman has led." Chapter 6. Hrothgar answered, "Helmet of Scyldings, I knew him of yore in his youthful days. His aged father was Ecgtheow named, to whom at home gave Hrethel the Great his only daughter. Their offspring bold fares hither to seek the steadfast friend, and seamen too have said me this, who carried my gifts to the greatish court thither for thanks. He has 30 men's heft of grasp in the grip of his hand, the bold in battle. Blessed God, out of his mercy this man hath sent to Danes of the West, as I ween indeed against horror of Grendel. I hope to give the good youth gold for his gallant thought. Be thou in haste, and bid them hither, clan of kinsmen, to come before me, and add this word: they are welcome guests to folk of the Danes." To the door of the hall of Garvin, and the word declared: "To you this message my master sends, East Danes' king, that your kin he knows, hardy heroes, and hails you all welcome hither o'er waves of the sea. Ye may wend your way in war attire, and under helmets Hrothgar greet. But let here the battle shields bide your parley, and wooden war shafts wait its end." Up rose the mighty one, ringed with his men, brave band of thanes, some bode without, battle gear guarding, as bade the chief. Then hied that troop where the herald led them. Under Herald's roof the hero strode, hardy neath them, till the hearth he neared. Beowulf spake, his breastplate gleamed, war net woven by wit of the smith. Thou, Hrothgar, hail! Hygleik's I, kinsman and follower. Fame aplenty have I gained in youth. These Grendel deeds I heard in my homeland, heralded clear. Seafarers say how stands this hall of buildings best, for your band of thanes empty and idle, when evening sun in the harbor of heaven is hidden away. So my vassals advised me well, brave and wise, the best of men. O sovereign Hrothgar, to seek thee here, for my nerve and my might they knew full well. Themselves had seen me from slaughter come, blood-flecked from foes, where 5 I bound, and that wild brood worsted. Aye, the waves I slew nickers, by night in need and peril avenging the welders, whose woe they sought, crushing the grim ones. Grendel now, monster cruel, be mine to quell in single battle. So from thee, thou sovereign of the shining Danes, Scalding's bulwark, a boon I seek, and, friend of the folk, refuse it not, O warrior's shield. Now I've wandered far, that I, alone, with my liegemen here, this hardy band, may Hroth purge. More I hear, that the monster dire, in this wanton mood, of weapons recks not. Hence shall I scorn, so Hygleik stay, king of my kindred, kind to me, brand or buckler to bear in the fight, gold-colored targ, but with gripe alone must I front the fiend and fight for life, foe against foe. Then faith be his, and the doom of the Lord, whom death shall take. Fain, I ween, if the fight he win, in this hall of gold my greatish band will he fearless eat, as oft before, my noblest thanes. Nor needst thou then to hide my head, for his shall I be, dyed in gore, if death must take me, and my blood-covered body he'll bear as prey, ruthless devour it, the roamer lonely, with my lifeblood redden his lair in the fen. No further for me needst food prepare, to Hygleik send, if Hild should take me, best of war weeds, warding my breast, armor excellent heirloom of Hrethel, and work of Wayland, fares weird as she must. Chapter 7. Hrothgar spake this Scalding's helmet, for fight defensive, friend my Beowulf, to succor and save, thou hast sought us here. Thy father's combat, a feud enkindled, when Hrothgar with hand he slew among the weaklings, his Vader ken for honoring the fighting fierce to hold him. Fleeing he sought our South Dane folk, over surge of ocean, the honor Scaldings, when first I was ruling the folk of Danes, wielded youthful this widespread realm, this hoard hold of heroes. Hrothgar was dead, my elder brother had breathed his last. Hilfdin's bairn, he was better than I. Straightway the feud with Fee I settled, to the Wheelflings sent o'er the watery ridges, treasures olden, oaths he swore me. Sore is my soul to say to any of the race of men what ruth for me and Hroth Grendel with hate hath wrought, what sudden harryings. All folk fail me, my warriors wane, for weird have swept them into Grendel's grasp. But God is able this deadly foe from his deeds to turn, boasted full oft as my beer they drank, earls o'er the ale cup, armed men, that they would bide in the beer hall here, Grendel's attack with terror of blades. Then was this mead house at morning tide dyed with gore, when the daylight broke all the boards of the benches, blood besprinkled, gory the hall. I had heroes the less, dougherty dear ones the death had reft. But sit to the banquet, unbind thy words, hardy hero, as heart shall prompt thee. Gather together the greatish men in the banquet hall on bench assigned, sturdy-spirited, sat them down, hardy-hearted. A henchman attended, carried the caravan cup in hand, served the clear mead. Oft minstrels sang blithe and herald, heroes revelled, no dearth of warriors, Wilder and Dane. Chapter 8. Unferth spake the son of Ecglaf, who sat at the feet of the Scalding's lord, unbound the battle runes. Beowulf's quest, sturdy seafarers sorely galled him. Ever he envied that other men should more achieve in middle earth of fame under heaven than he himself. Art thou that Beowulf, Breca's rival, whose emulous swam on the open sea, when for pride the pair of you proved the floods, and wantonly dared in waters deep to risk your lives? No living man, or lief or loath, from your labor dire could you dissuade from swimming the main. Ocean tides with your arms ye covered, with strenuous hands the sea streets measured, swam o'er the waters. Winter's storm rolled through the waves, and realm of sea a Sinite strove ye, and swimming he topped thee. Had more of main, him at morning tide billows bore to the battling Ramus, whence he hied to his home so dear beloved of his liegemen, to land of Broding's fastness fair, where his folk he ruled, town and treasure. In triumph o'er thee Bean stands bairn, his boast achieved. So ween I for thee a worse adventure, though in buffet of battle thou brave hast been in struggle grim, if Grendel's approach thou darst await through the watch of night. Beowulf spake, bairn of Ecgtheow, what a deal hast uttered. Dear my unfairth, drunken with beer, of Breca now, told of his triumph. Truth, I claim it, that I had more of might in the sea than any man else. More ocean endurance. We twain had talked in time of youth, and made our boast. We were merely boys, striplings still, to take our lives far at sea, and so we performed it. Naked swords, as we swam along, we held in hand, with hope to guard us against the whales. Not a whit from me could he float afar o'er the flood of waves, haste o'er the billows, nor him I abandoned. Together we twain on the tides abode 5 nights full, till the flood divided us, churning waves and chillest weather, darkling night, and the northern wind ruthless rushed on us. Rough was the surge. Now the wrath of the sea fish rose apace, yet me 'gainst the monsters my mailed coat, hard and hand-linked, help afforded. Battle sark braided my breast to ward, garnished with gold. There grasped me firm, and haled me to the bottom of the hated foe, with grimace grip. 'Twas granted me, though, to pierce the monster with point of sword, with blade of battle. Huge beast of the sea was whelmed by the hurley through hand of mine. Chapter 9. Me thus often the evil monsters thronging threatened, with thrust of my sword, the darling I dealt them do return. No wise had they bliss from their booty than to devour their victim. Vengeful creatures, seated to banquet at bottom of sea, bolt at break of day, by my brand sore hurt on the edge of ocean up they lay, put to sleep by the sword, and since by them on the fathomless seaways sailor folk are never molested. Light from east came, bright God's beacon, the billows sank, so that I saw the sea cliffs high, windy walls, for weird oft saveth Earl, undoomed if he doughty be. And so it came that I killed with my sword 9 of the nickers of night-fraught battles, ne'er heard I a harder 'neath heaven's dome, nor adrift on the deep a more desolate man. Yet I came unharmed from that hostile clutch, though spent with swimming. The sea abhor me, flood of the tide on Finnish land, the welling waters. No wise of thee have I heard men tell such terror of Latians, bitter battle, Breca ne'er yet. Not one of you pair in the play of war such daring deeds has done at all with bloody brand. I boast not of it, though thou wast the bane of thy brethren dear, thy closest kin, whence curse of hell awaits thee, well as thy wit may serve. For I say in sooth, thou son of Ecglaf, never had Grendel these grim deeds wrought, monster dire, on thy master dear, and Hroth such havoc, if heart of thine were as battle bold as thy boast is loud. But he has found no feud will happen from sword clash dread of your Danish clan. He vaunts them safe from the victor Scyldings. He forces pledges, favors none of the land of Danes, but lustily murders, fights and feasts. Nor feud he dreads from spear Dane men. But speedily now shall I prove him the prowess and pride of the Geats, shall bid him battle. Blithe to mead go he that listeth, when light of dawn this morrow morning o'er men of earth, ether-robbed sun from the south shall beam. Joyous then was the jewel-giver, hoar-haired war-brave, help awaited the bright Dane's prince from Beowulf hearing, folk's good shepherd such firm resolve. Then was laughter of liegemen loud resounding with winsome words. came Wealhtheow forth, queen of Hrothgar, heedful of courtesy, gold-decked, greeting the guests in hall, and the high-born lady handed the cup first to the East Danes' heir and warden, bade him be blithe at the beer carouse, the land's beloved one. Lustily took he banquet at the beaker, battle-famed king. Through the hall then went the Hemling's lady, to younger and older everywhere carried the cup, till come the moment when the ring-graced queen, the royal-hearted, to Beowulf, bore the beaker of mead. She greeted the Geats' lord, God she thanked in wisdom's words, that her will was granted, that at last on a hero her hope could lean for comfort in terrors. The cup he took, hardy in war, from Wealhtheow's hand, and answer uttered the eager for combat. Beowulf spake, bairn of Ecgtheow. This was my thought when my thanes and I bent to the ocean and entered our boat, that I would work the will of your people fully, or fighting fall in death. In fiends grip fast. I am firm to do an earl's brave deed, or end the days of this life of mine in the mead hall here. Well, these words to the woman seemed, Beowulf's battle boast. Bright with gold, the stately dame by her spouse sat down. Again at erst began in hall warriors wassail and words of prayer, the proud band's revel, till presently the son of Healfdene's hastened to seek rest for the night. He knew there waited fight for the fiend in that feastal hall, when the sheen of the sun they saw no more, and dusk of night sank darkling nigh, and shadowy shapes came striding on. Wan under welkin, the warriors rose. Man to man he made harangue. Hrothgar to Beowulf bade him hail. Let him wield thy wine hall, a word he added. Never to any man erst I trusted, since I could heave up hand and shield this noble Dane hall, till now to thee. Have now, and hold this house unpeered. Remember thy glory, thy might declare. Watch for the foe. No wish shall fail thee if thou bidst the battle with a bold won life. Chapter 10. Then Hrothgar went with his hero train, defensive Scyldings, forth from hall. Fain would the warlord Wealhtheow seek couch of his queen. The king of glory against this Grendel a guard had set, so heroes heard a hall defender, who warded the monarch and watched for the monster. In truth the Geats prince gladly trusted his mettle, his might, the mercy of God. Cast off then his corslet of iron, helmet from head, to his henchman gave, choicest of weapons, the well-chased sword, bidding him guard the gear of battle. Spake then his vaunt, the valiant man, Beowulf, Geat, ere the bed be sought, of force and fight no feebler I count me, and grim war deeds than Grendel deems him. Not with sword then, to sleep of death his life will I give, though it lie in my power. No skill is his to strike against me, my shield to hew, though he hardly be. Bold in battle, we both this night shall spurn the sword. If he seek me here, unweaponed for war, let wisest God, sacred Lord, on which side soever, doom decree as he deemeth right. Reclined then the chieftain, and cheek pillows held the head of the earl, while all about him seamen hardy on hall beds sank. None of them thought that thence their steps to the folk and fastness that fostered them to the land they loved would lead them back. Full well they wist that on warriors many battle death seized in the banquet hall of Danish clan, but comfort and help, war wheel weaving to weeder folk the master gave, that by might of one over their enemy all prevailed by single strength, and soothed 'tis told that highest God or humankind hath wielded ever. Through one night striding came the walker in shadow. Warriors slept, whose hest was to guard the gabled hall, all save one. 'Twas widely known that against God's will the ghostly ravager him could not hurl to haunts of darkness. Wakeful, ready, with warrior's wrath, bold he bided the battle's issue. Chapter 11. Then from the moorland, by misty crags, with God's wrath laden, Grendel came. The monster was minded of mankind now, sundry to seize in the stately house. Under welkin he walked, till the wine palace there, gold hall of men, he gladly discerned, flashing with fretwork. Not first time, this, that he the home of Hrothgar sought, yet ne'er in his life day, late or early, such hardy heroes, such hall thanes found. To the house the warrior walked apace, parted from peace. The portal opened, though with forged bolts fast, when his fists had struck it, and baleful he burst in his blatant rage the house's mouth. All hastily then, o'er fair paved floor the fiend trode on, ireful he strode. There streamed from his eyes fearful flashes, like flame to see. He spied in hall the hero band, kin and clansmen clustered asleep, hardy liegemen. Then laughed his heart, for the monster was minded ere morn should dawn, savage to sever the soul of each, life from body, since lusty banquet waited his will. But Weird forbade him to seize any more of men on earth after that evening. Eagerly watched Hygelac's kinsman, his cursed foe, how he would fare in fell attack, not that the monster was minded to pause. Straightway he seized a sleeping warrior for the first, and tore him fiercely asunder. The bone frame bit, drank blood in streams, swallowed him piecemeal. Swiftly thus the lifeless corse was clear devoured, ane feet and hands. Then farther he hied, for the hardy hero with hand he grasped, felt for his foe with fiendish claw, for the hero reclining, who clutched it boldly, prompt to answer, popped on his arm. Soon then saw that shepherd of evils that never had met in this middle world in the ways of earth another wheat with heavier hand grip. At heart he feared, sorrowed in soul, none the sooner escaped. Fain would he flee, his fastness seek, the den of devils. No doings now such as oft he had done in days of old. Then bethought him the hardy Hygelac thane of his boast at evening. Up he bounded, grasped firm his foe, whose fingers cracked. Then fiend made off, but the earl close followed. The monster meant, if he might at all, to fling himself free, and far away fly to the fens. Knew his fingers' power in the grip of the grim one. Gruesome march to Heorot this monster of harm had made. Din filled the room. The Danes were bereft, castle dwellers and clansmen all, earls of their ale. Angry were both those savage hall guards. The house resounded. Wonder, it was the wine hall, firm in the strain of their struggle stood. To earth the fair house fell not. Too fast it was within, and without by its iron bands craftily clamped. Though there crashed from sill many a mead bench, men have told me, gay with gold, where the grim foes wrestled. So well had weened the wisest geldings that not ever at all might any man that bone-decked brave house break asunder, crush by craft. Unless clasp of fire and smoke engulfed it, again uprose din redoubled. Danes of the north with fear and frenzy were filled, each one, who from the wall that wailing heard, God's foe sounding his grisly song, cry of the conquered, clamorous pain from captive of hell. Too closely held him he who of men and might was strongest in that same day of this our life. Chapter 12. Not in any wise would the earl's defense suffer that slaughterous stranger to live, unless deeming his days and years to men on earth. Now many an earl of Beowulf brandished blade ancestral, fain the life of their lord to shield, their praised prince, if power were theirs. Never they knew, as they neared the foe, hardy-hearted heroes of war, aiming their swords on every side, the accursed to kill. No keenest blade, no fairest of falchions fashioned on earth could harm or hurt that hideous fiend. He was safe by his spells, from sword of battle, from edge of iron. Yet his end and parting on that same day of this our life woeful should be, and his wandering soul far off flit to the fiend's domain. Soon he found who in former days harmful in the heart and hated of God, on many a man such murder wrought, that the frame of his body failed him now. For him the keen-souled kinsman of Hygelac held in hand, hateful, alive was each to other. The outlaw dire took mortal hurt, a mighty wound showed on his shoulder, and sinews cracked, and the bone frame burst. To Beowulf now the glory was given, and Grendel thence death-sick his den in the dark moor sought, noisome abode. He knew too well that here was the last of life, an end of his days on earth. To all the Danes by that bloody battle the boon had come. From ravage had rescued the roving stranger Hrothgar's hall. The hardy and wise one had purged it anew. His night work pleased him, his deed and its honor. To eastern Danes had the valiant Geat his vaunt made good, all their sorrow and ills assuaged, their bale of battle borne so long, and all the dole they erst endured pain aplenty. 'Twas proof of this, when the hardy in fight a hand laid down, arm and shoulder, all indeed of Grendel's grip, 'neath the gabled roof. Chapter 13. Many at morning, as men have told me, warriors gathered the gift hall round, folk leaders faring from far and near, o'er wide-stretched ways, the wonder to view. Trace of the traitor, not troublous seemed the enemy's end to any man who saw by the gate of the graceless foe how the weary-hearted away from thence, baffled in battle and band, his steps death-marked dragged to the devil's mere. Bloody the billows were boiling there, turbid the tide of trembling waves, horribly seething, with sword blood hot. By the doomed one died, who in den of the moor laid forlorn his life adown, his heathen soul, and hell received it. Home then rode the hoary clansmen from the merry journey, and many a youth on horses white, the hardy warriors, back from the mere. Then Beowulf's glory eager they echoed, and all averred that from sea to sea, or south or north, there was no other in earth's domain under vault of heaven more valiant found, of warriors none more worthy to rule. On their lord beloved they laid no slight, gracious Hrothgar, a good king he. From time to time, the tried in battle, their grey steeds set to gallop amain, and ran a race when the road seemed fair. From time to time, a thane of the king, who had made many vaunts, and was mindful of verses, stored with sages and songs of old, bound word to word in well-knit rhyme, welded his lay, this warrior soon of Beowulf's quest, right cleverly sang, and artfully added an excellent tale, and well-ranged words of the warlike deeds he had heard in saga of Siegmund. Strange the story, he said it all, though Vesling's wanderings wide, his struggles, which never were told to tribes of men, the feuds and the frauds, save to Fatellia only. When these doings he deigned to speak, uncle to nephew, as ever the twain stood side by side in stress of war, and multitude of the monster kind they had felled with their swords. Of Siegmund grew, when he passed from life, no little praise, for the doughty in combat a dragon killed that herded the horde under hoary rock. The atheling dared the deed alone, fearful quest, nor was Fatellia there. Yet, so it befell, his falchion pierced that wondrous worm, on the wall it struck. Best blade, the dragon died in its blood. Thus had the dread one, by daring achieved, over the ring horde to rule at will. Himself to pleasure, a sea boat he loaded, and bore on it bosom the beaming gold, son of Vales. The worm was consumed. He had, of all heroes, the highest renown among races of men, this refuge of warriors, for deeds of daring that decked his name, since the hand and heart of Hermund grew slack in battle. He swiftly banished to mingle with monsters at mercy of foes, to death was betrayed, for torrents of sorrow had lamed him too long. A load of care to earls and athelings all he proved, oft indeed in earlier days, for the warriors wayfaring wise men mourned, who had hoped of him help from harm and bale, and had thought their sovereign son would thrive, follow his father, his folk to protect, the horde in the stronghold heroes' land, home of Skydlings. But here, Thane said, the kingsmen of Hygelac kinder seemed to all. The other was urged to crime, and afresh to the race, the fallow roads by swift steeds measured. The morning sun was climbing higher. Clansmen hastened to the high-built hall, whose hardy-minded the wonder to witness. Warden of treasure, crowned with glory, the king himself, with stately band from the bride bower strode, and with him the queen and her crowd of maidens measured the path to the mead house fair. Chapter 14. Hrothgar spake. To the hall he went, stood by the steps, the steep roof saw, garnished with gold the Grendel's hand. For the sight I see to the sovereign ruler be speedy thanks. A throng of sorrows I have borne from Grendel, but God still works wonder on wonder, the warden of glory. It was but now that I never more, for woes that weighed on me, waited help long as I lived, when, laved in blood, stood sword gore stained, this stateliest house. Widespread woe for wise men all, who had no hope to hinder ever foes infernal and fiendish sprites from havoc in hall. This hero now, by the wielder's might, a work has done that not all of us heirs could ever do, by wile and wisdom. Lo, well can she say whoso of woman this warrior bore among sons of men, if still she liveth, that the God of the ages was good to her in the birth of her bairn. Now, Beowulf thee, of heroes best, I shall heartily love as my own, my son. Persevere thou ever this kinship new, thou shalt never lack wealth of the world that I wield is mine. Full oft for less have I largest showered my previous hoard on punier man less stout in struggle. Thyself hast now fulfilled such deeds that thy fame shall endure through all the ages. As ever he did, well may that wielder reward thee still. Beowulf spake, Bairn of Ecthio. This work of war most willingly we have fought, this fight and fearlessly dared force of the foe. Fain too were I hadst thou but seen himself, what time the fiend in his trappings tottered to fall. Swiftly I thought in strongest grip on his bed of death to bind him down, that he in the hint of this hand of mine should breathe his last. But he broke away. Him I might not, the Maker willed not, hinder from flight, and firm enough hold the life-destroyer. Too sturdy was he, the ruthless in running. For rescue, however, he left behind him his hand in pledge, arm and shoulder. Nor aught of help could the cursed one thus procure at all. None the longer liveth he, loathsome fiend, sunk in his sins, but sorrow holds him tightly grasped in grip of anguish, then baleful bonds, where bide he must, evil outlaw, such awful doom as the mighty Maker shall mete him out. More silent seemed the son of Ecglaf, in boastful speech of his battle deeds, since atheling all, through the earl's great prowess, beheld that hand, on the high roof gazing, foreman's fingers. The forest of each of the sturdy nails to steel was likest, heathen's hand spear, hostile warrior's claw uncanny. 'Twas clear, they said, that him no blade of the brave could touch, how keen soever, or cut away that battle hand bloody from baneful foe. Chapter 15. There was hurry and hest in Heorot now for hands to bedeck it, and dense was the throng of men and women, the wine hall to cleanse, the guest room to garnish. Gold gay shone the hangings that were wove on the wall, and wonders many to delight each mortal that looks upon them. Though braced within by iron bands, that building bright was broken sorely. Rent were its hinges, the roof alone held safe and sound, when seared with crime the fiendish foe his flight essayed, of life despairing. No light thing that, the flight for safety, essay it who will. Forced of fate, he shall find his way to the refuge ready for race of man, for soul possessors and sons of earth, and there his body on bed of death shall rest ever revel. Arrived was the hour, when to hall proceeded Healfdane's son, the king himself would sit to banquet. Ne'er heard I of host and haughtier throng more graciously gathered round giver of rings, bowed then to bench those bearers of glory, fain of the feasting. Fately received many a mead cup, the mighty in spirit kinsmen who sat in the sumptuous hall, Hrothgar and Hrothulf. Heorot now was filled with friends, the folk of Scyldings, ne'er yet had tried the traitor's deed. To Beowulf gave the Baron of Healfdene a gold-wove banner, guerdon of triumph, broidered battle flag, breastplate and helmet, and splendid sword was seen of many borne to the brave one. Beowulf took cup and hall, for such costly gifts he suffered no shame in that soldier throng. For I heard of few heroes in hardier mood, with 4 such gifts, so fashioned with gold, on the ale bench honoring others thus. O'er the roof of the helmet high, a ridge wound with wires kept ward o'er the head, lest the relict of files should fierce invade, sharp in the strife, when that shielded hero should go to grapple against his foes. Then the earl's defense on the floor bade lead coursers 8 with carven headgear. Adown the hall, one horse was decked with a saddle all shining and set in jewels. 'Twas the battle seat of the best of kings, when to play of swords the son of Healfdene was fain to fare. Ne'er failed his valor in the crush of combat when corpses fell. To Beowulf over them both he gave the refuge of Ingwin's right and power. O'er the war steeds and weapons wished him joy of them. Manfully thus the mighty prince, Hrothgar for heroes, that hard fight repaid with steeds and treasures contemned by none who is willing to say the sooth aright. Chapter 16. And the Lord of Errol's to each that came with Beowulf over the briny ways, an heirloom there at the ale bench gave, precious gift, and the price bade pay in gold for him who Grendel erst murdered, and fain of them more had killed, had not wisest God their weird averted, and the man's brave mood. The Maker then ruled humankind, as here and now. Therefore is insight always best, and forethought of mind. How much awaits him, the lief and the loath, who long time here through days of warfare this world endures. Then song and music mingled sounds in the presence of Healfdene's head of armies, and heaping was heard with hero lay as Hrothgar's singer the hall joy woke along the mead seats, making his song of that sudden raid on the sons of Finn. Healfdene's hero, Hnaf the Scylding, was fated to fall in the Frisian slaughter. Hildur needed not hold in value her enemy's honor. Innocent both were the loved ones she lost at the linden play, bairn and brother. They bowed to fate, stricken by spears. 'Twas a sorrowful woman. None doubted why the daughter of Hawk bewailed her doom when dawning came, and under the sky she saw them lying, kinsmen murdered, where most she had keen on the sweets of this world. By war were swept too Finn's own liegemen, and few were left in that parleying place. He could ply no longer weapon, no war could he wage on Hengist, then rescue his remnant by right of arms from the prince's thane. A pact he offered, another dwelling the thane should have, hall and high seat, and half the power should fall to them in Frisian land, and at the free gifts Thorvald's son day by day the Danes should honor. The folk of the Hengist favor with rings, even as truly with treasure and jewels, with fretted gold, as his Frisian kin he meant to honor in Elhall there. Pact of peace they plighted further on both sides firmly. Finn to Hengist, with oath upon honor, openly promised that woeful remnant, with wise men's aid, nobly to govern, so none of the guests by word or work should warp the treaty, or with malice of mind bemoan themselves as forced to follow their free-giver's slayer, lordless men, as their lot ordained. Should Frisian, moreover, with foreman's taunt that murderous hatred to mind recall, then the edge of the sword must seal his doom. Oaths were given, and ancient gold heaped from hoard. The hardy Scylding, battle thane best, on his balefire lay. Along the prior were plain to see the glory Sark, the gilded swine crest, boar of hard iron, and aethelings many slain by the sword. At the slaughter they fell. It was Hildeburh's hest, and Hnaf's own prior, that the bairn of her body on brands to lay, his bones to burn on the baleful placed at his uncle's side. And sorrowful dirges bewept them, the women, great wailing ascended. Then wound up to welkin the wildest of death fires, roared o'er the hillock. Heads all were melted, gashes burst, and blood gushed out from the bites of the body. Balefire devoured, greediest spirit, those spared not by war out of either folk. Their flower was gone. Chapter 17. Then hastened those heroes their home to see, friendless, to find the Frisian land, houses and high burg. Hengist still through the death-dyed winter dwelt with Finn, holding pact, yet of home he minded. Though powerless his ring-decked prow to drive over the waters, now waves rolled fierce, lashed by the winds, or winter locked them in icy fetters. Then fared another year to men's dwellings, as yet they do, the sun-bright skies, that their season ever duly await. Far off winter was driven, fairly earth's breast, and fain was the rover, the guest, to depart, though more gladly he pondered on wreaking the vengeance than roaming the deep, and how to hasten the hot encounter where sons of the Frisians were sure to be. So he escaped not the common doom. Then Hun, with Leifling, the light of battle, best of blades, his bosom pierced. Its edge was famed with the Frisian earls. On fierce heart Finn there fell likewise, on himself at home, the horrid sword death. For Guthlaf and Aslaf of grim attack had sorrowing told, from seaways landed mourning their woes. Finn's wavering spirit bode not in breast. The burg was reddened with blood of foemen, and Finn was slain. King amid clansmen, the queen was taken. To their ship the Scylding warriors bore all the chattels and chieftain owned, whatever they found in Finn's domain of gems and jewels. The gentle wife o'er paths of the deep to the Danes they bore, led to her land. The lay was finished, the gleeman's song. Then glad rose the revel, bench joy brightened. Bearers draw from the wonder vat's wine. Comes Wealhtheows forth. Under gold crown goes where the gold pairs sit, uncle and nephew, true each to the other one. Kindred and amity. Unferth the spokesman at the Scylding's lord's feet sat. Men had faith in his spirit, his keenness of courage, though kinsmen had found him unsure at the swordplay. The Scylding queen spoke. Quaff of this cup, my king and lord, breaker of rings, and blithe be thou, gold friend of men. To the Geats here speak such words of mildness as man should use. Be glad with thy Geats, of those gifts be mindful, or near or far, which now thou hast. Men say to me, as son thou wishest yon hero to hold, thy throat purged, jewel hall brightest, enjoy while thou canst, with many a largess, and leave to thy kinfolk and realm, when forth thou goest to greet thy doom. For gracious I deem my Hrothgar, willing to hold and rule nobly our youths, if thou yield up first, Prince of Scyldings, thy part in the world. I ween with good he will well requite offspring of ours, when all he minds that for him we did in his helpless days of gift and grace to gain him honor. Then she turned to the seat where her sons were placed, Hrothgar and Hrothmund, with heroes barons, young men together. The great two sat there, Beowulf brave, the brothers between. Chapter 18. A cup she gave him with kindly greeting and winsome words. Of wounden gold she offered to honor him, arm jewels twain, corslet and rings, and of collars the noblest that ever I knew the earth around. Ne'er heard I so mighty, neath heaven's dome, a hoard gem of heroes, since him upbore to his bright-built burg the bristings necklace, jewel and gem casket. Jealousy fled he, ere Manric's hate chose help eternal. High Gaelic Geet, grandson of Swearting, on the last of his raids this ring bore with him, under his banner the booty defending, the war spoil warding. But weird o'erwhelmed him what time in his daring dangers he sought feud with Frisians. Fairest of gems he bore with him over the beaker of waves, sovereign strong, under shield he died. Fell the corpse of the king into keeping of Franks, gear of the breast, and the gorgeous ring, wreaker of warriors won the spoil, after grip of battle from Greatland's lord, and held the death field. Then rose in hall, Wealhtheow spake amid warriors and said, This jewel enjoy in thy jocund youth. Beowulf loved, these battle weeds wear, a royal treasure and richly thrive. Preserve thy strength, and these striplings here counsel in kindness, requital be mine. Hast done such deeds that for days to come thou art famed among folk both far and near. So wide as washeth the wave of ocean his windy walls. Through the ways of life prosper, O Prince, I pray for thee rich possessions. To son of mine be helpful indeed, and uphold his joys. Here every earl to the other is true, mild of mood to the master loyal. Thanes are friendly, the throng obedient, liegemen are revelling, list and obey. Went then to her place, that was proudest of feats, flowed wine for the warriors, weird they knew not destiny dire, and the doom to be seen by many an earl when eve should come, and Hrothgar homeward hasten away, royal to rest. The room was guarded by an army of earls, as erst was done. They barred the bench boards, abroad they spread beds and bolsters. One beer carouser in danger of doom lay down in the hall. At their heads they set their shields of war, bucklers bright. On the bench were there over each atheling, easy to see, the high battle helmet, the haughty spear, the corslet of rings. 'Twas their custom so ever to be for battle prepare, at home or harrying, which it were, even as oft as evil threatened their sovereign king. They were clansmen good. Chapter 19. Then sank they to sleep, with sorrow one bought his rest of the evening, as oftentime had happened, when Grendel guarded the golden hall, evil wrought, till his end drew nigh, slaughter for sins. 'Twas seen and told how an avenger survived the fiend, as was learned afar, the livelong time after the grim fight. Grendel's mother, monster of women, mourned her woe. She was doomed to dwell in the dreary waters, cold sea courses, since Cain cut down with edge of the sword his only brother. His father's offspring, outlawed he fled, marked with murder, from men's delights warded the wilds. There woke from him such fates sent ghosts as Grendel, who wore wolf horrid, at Hroth found, a warrior watching and waiting the fray, with whom the grisly one had grappled amain. But the men remembered his mighty power, the glorious gift that God had sent him, in his Maker's mercy put his trust for comfort and help. So he conquered the foe, felled the fiend, who fled abject, reft of joy, to the realms of death, mankind's foe. And his mother now, gloomy and grim, would go that quest of sorrow, the death of her son to avenge. To Hroth came she, where helmeted Danes slept in the hall. Too soon came back old ills of the earls, when in she burst, the mother of Grendel, Less grim, though, that terror, e'en as terror of women, in war is less, might have made, than of men in arms, when hammer forged, the falchion hard, sore gourd stained, through swine of the helm, crested, with keen blade carves amain. Then was in hall the hard edge drawn, the swords on the settles, and shields a many, firm held in hand, nor helmet minded, nor harness of mail, whom that horror seized. Haste was hers, she would hie afar, and save her life when liegemen saw her. Yet a single atheling up she seized fast and firm, as she fled to the moor. He was for Hrothgar of heroes the dearest, of trusty vassals betwixt the seas, whom she killed on his couch, a clansman famous, and battle brave. Nor was Beowulf there, another house had been held apart after giving of gold, for the Geat renowned. Uproar filled Heorot, the hand all had viewed, blood-flecked. She bore with her, bale was returned, dole in the dwellings. 'Twas dire exchange, where Dane and Geat were doomed to give the lives of loved ones. Long-tried king, the hoary hero, at heart was sad when he knew his noble no more lived, and dead indeed was his dearest thane. To his bower was Beowulf brought in haste, dauntless victor. As daylight broke, along with his earls, the atheling lord with his clansmen came where the king abode, waiting to see if the wielder of all would turn this tale of trouble and woe. Strode o'er floor the famed in strife, with his hand companions, the hall resounded, wishing to greet the wise old king. Ingwines lord, he asked if the night had passed in peace to the prince's mind. Chapter 20. Hrothgar spake, helmet of Scyldings, ask not of pleasure, pain is renewed to Danish folk. Dead is Aesir of Germanic, the elder brother, my sage adviser and stay in council. Shoulder comrade in stress of fight, when warriors clashed and we warded our heads. Hewed the helm bore's hero fame should be every earl as Aesir was. But here in Heorot, a hand hath slain him of wandering death sprite. I wot not whither, proud of the prey, her path she took, fain of her fill, the feud she avenged, that yesternight, unyieldingly, Grendel and Grimace grasp thou killedst. Seeing how long these liegemen mine he ruined and ravaged, reft of life in arms he fell. Now another comes, keen and cruel, her kin to avenge, faring far in feud of blood. So that many a thane shall think, who e'er sorrows in soul for that sharer of rings, this is hardest of heart bales. The hand lies low that once was willing each wish to please. Land dwellers here, and liegemen mine, who house by those parts, I have heard relate that such a pair they have sometimes seen. March stalkers mighty, the moorland hunting, wandering spirits. One of them seemed, so far as my folk could fairly judge, of womankind, and one accursed, and man's guise trod the misery track of exile, through hunger than human bulk. Grendel in days long gone they named him, folk of the land. His father they knew not, nor any brood that was born to him, of treacherous spirits. Untrod is their home, by wolf's cliffs haunt they in windy headlands, Finway fearful, where flows the stream from mountains, gliding to gloom of the rocks, underground flood. Now far is it hence in measure of miles that the mere expands, and o'er it the frost-bound forest hanging, sturdily rooted, shadows the wave. By night is a wonder weird to see fires on the waters. So wise lived none of the sons of men to search those depths. Nay, though the heath rover, harried by dogs, the horn-proud hart, this holt should seek, long distance driven, his dear life first on the brink he yields ere he brave the plunge to hide his head. 'Tis no happy place. Thence the welter of waters washes up, wan to welkin when winds bestir evil storms, and air grows dusk, and the heavens weep. Now is help once more with thee alone, the land thou knowest not, place of fear, where thou findest out that sin-flecked being. Seek if thou dare. I will reward thee for waging this fight with ancient treasure, as erst I did with winding gold, if thou winnest back. Chapter 21. Beowulf spake, Bairn of Ecgtheow. Sorrow not, sage, it becomes us better friends to avenge than fruitlessly mourn them. Each of us all must his end abide in the ways of the world, so win who may glory ere death. when his days are told, what is the warrior's worthiest doom? Rise, O realm warder, ride we anon, and mark the trail of the mother of Grendel. No harbor shall hide her, heed my promise. Enfolding of field or forestead mountain or floor of the flood, let her flee where she will. But thou this day endure in patience, as I ween thou wilt, thy woes each one. Leaped up the graveyard, God he thanked, mighty lord, for the man's brave words. For Hrothgar soon a horse was saddled, wave-maned steed, the sovereign wise stately rode on. His shield-armed men followed in force. The footprints led along the woodland, widely seen, a path o'er the plain, where she passed and trod the murky moor of men-at-arms. She bore the bravest and best one, dead, him who with Hrothgar the homestead ruled. On then went the atheling born, o'er stone cliffs steep and straight defiles, narrow passes and unknown ways, headlands sheer, and the haunts of the knickers. Foremost he fared, a few at his side of the wiser men, the ways to scan, till he found in a flash the forested hill hanging over a hoary rock, a woeful wood. The waves below were dyed in blood. The Danish men had sorrow of soul, and for Scyldings all, for many a hero, 'twas hard to bear. Ill for earls, when Aesir's head they found by the flood on the foreland there. Waves were welling, the warriors saw, hot with blood, but the horn sang oft battle song bold. The band sat down and watched on the water worm-like things, sea dragons strange that sounded the deep, and knickers that lay on the ledge of the ness. Such as oft essay an hour of morn on the road of sails their ruthless quest, and sea snakes and monsters. These started away, swollen and savage, the song to hear. That war horn's blast, the warden of Geats with bolt from bow, then balked of life. Of wavework one monster amid its heart went the keen war shaft, and water it seemed less doughty in swimming whom death had seized. Swift on the billows, with boar spears well hooked and barbed, it was hard beset. Done to death and dragged on the headland, wave roamer wondrous. Warriors viewed the grisly guest. Then girt himself Beowulf in martial mail, nor mourned for his life. His breastplate broad and bright of hues, woven by hand, should the waters try. Well could it ward the warrior's body, that battle should break on his breast in vain, nor harm his heart by the hand of a foe. And the helmet white that his head protected was destined to dare the deeps of the flood. Through wave whirlwind, 'twas wound with chains, decked with gold as in days of yore. The weaponsmith worked it wondrously, with swine forms set in, that swords nowise brandished in battle could bite that helm, nor was the meanest of mighty helps which Hrothgar's order offered at need. Hrunting they named the hilted sword, of old-time heirlooms easily first. Iron was its edge, all etched with poison, with battle blood hardened, nor blenched it at fight, in hero's hand who held it ever. On paths of peril prepared to go, to folkstead of foes. Not first time this, it was destined to do a daring task. For he bore not in mind the Baron of Ecglaf, sturdy and strong, that speech he had made, drunk with wine. Now this weapon he lent to a stouter swordsman. Himself, though, durst not under water of waters wager his life as loyal liegeman. So lost he his glory, honor of earls, when the others not so, who girded him now for the grim encounter. Chapter 22. Beowulf spake, Baron of Ecglaf, have mind thou, honored offspring of Healfdene, gold friend of men, now I go on this quest, sovereign wise. What once was said, if I in thy cause it came that I shouldst lose my life, thou wouldst loyal bide to me, though fallen, and father's place. Be guardian thou to this group of my thanes, my warrior friends, if war should seize me, and the goodly gifts thou gavest me, Hrothgar beloved, to Hugelac send. Great land's king may ken by the gold, Hrethel's son see when he stares at the treasure, that I got me a friend for goodness famed, and joyed while I could in my jewel bestower. And let Unferth wield this wondrous sword, Earl far honored, this heirloom precious, heart of edge. With Hrunting I seek doom of glory, or death shall take me. After these words the wader Geat lord boldly hastened, biting never answered at all, the ocean floods closed o'er the hero. Long while of the day fled ere he felt the floor of the sea. soon found the fiend who the flood domain sword-hungry held these 100 winters, greedy and grim, that some guest from above, some man, was raiding her monster realm. She grasped out for him with grisly claws, and the warrior seized, yet scathed she not his body hale. The breastplate hindered, and she strove to shatter the sark of war, the linked harness with loathsome hand, then borne this blind wolf. When bottom she touched, the Lord of Rings to the lair she haunted, whiles vainly he strove, through his valor held, weapon to wield against wondrous monsters that sore beset him. Sea beasts many tried with fierce tusks to tear his mail, and swarmed on the stranger. But soon he marked he was now in some hall, he knew not which, where water never could work him harm, nor through the roof could reach him ever fangs of the flood. Firelight he saw, beams of a blaze that brightly shone. Then the warrior was ware of that wolf of the deep, mere wife monstrous. For mighty stroke he swung his blade, and the blow withheld not. Then sang on her head that seemly blade, its war song wild. But the warrior found the light of battle was loath to bite. To harm the heart, its hard edge failed the noble at need, yet had known of old strife hand to hand, and had helmets cloven, doomed men's fighting gear. First time this, for the gleaming blade that its glory fell. Firm still stood, nor failed in valor, heedful of high deeds, Hyglaic's kinsman, flung away fretted sword, featly jeweled. The angry earl, on earth it lay, steel-edged and stiff. His strength he trusted, hand grip of might. So man shall do whenever in war he weens to earn him lasting fame, nor fears for his life. Seized then by shoulder, shrank not from combat. The Geatish war prince Grendel's mother flung then the fierce one, filled with wrath, his deadly foe that she fell to the ground. Swift on her part she paid him back with grisly grasp, and grappled with him. Spent with struggle, stumbled the warrior, fiercest of fighting men, fell adown. On the hall guest she hurled herself, hent her short sword, broad and brown edge, the bairn to avenge, the soul-born son. On his shoulder lay braided breastmail, barring death. Withstanding entrance of edge of blade, life would have ended for Ecgtheow's son, under wide earth for that Earl of Geats, had his armor war not aided him. Battle net hard, and holy God wielded the victory, wisest maker. The Lord of Heaven allowed his cause, and easily rose the Earl erect. Chapter 23. Mid the battle gear saw he a blade triumphant, old sword of Eaton's, with edge of proof, warrior's heirloom, weapon unmatched. Save only 'twas more than other men to bandy of battle could bear it all, as the giants had wrought it, ready and keen. Seized then its chain hilt, the Scyldings' chieftain, bold and battle grim, brandished the sword, reckless of life, and so wrathfully smote that it gripped her neck and grasped her hard, her bone rings breaking, the blade pierced through that faded one's flesh, to floor she sank. Bloody the blade, he was blithe of his deed. Then blazed forth light. 'Twas bright within, as when from the sky there shines unclouded heaven's candle. The hall he scanned. By the wall then went he, his weapon raised high by its hilts, the Hyglac thane, angry and eager. That edge was not useless to the warrior now. He wished with speed Grendel to garden for grim raids many, for the war he waged on western Danes, oftener far than only time, when Hrothgar's heart companions he slew in slumber, in sleep devoured 15 men of the folk of Danes, and as many others outward bore his horrible prey. Well paid for that the wrathful prince, for now prone he saw Grendel stretched there, spent with war, spoiled of life. So scathed had left him Herald's battle. The body sprang far when after death it endured the blow, sword stroke savage that severed its head. Soon then saw the sage companions who waited for Hrothgar watching the flood, that the tossing waters turbid grew, blood-stained the mare. Old men together, hoary-haired, of the hero spake. The warrior would not, they weened again, proud of conquest, come to seek their mighty master. Too many it seemed the wolf of the waves had won his life. The 9th hour came, the noble Scyldings left the headland, homeward went the gold friend of men. But the guests sat on, stared at the surges, sick in heart, and wished, yet weened not their winsome lord again to see. Now the sword began, from blood of the fight and battle droppings, war blade to wane. 'Twas a wondrous thing that all of it melted as ice is wont when frosty fetters the Father loosens, unwinds the wave bonds, wielding all seasons and times, the true God he. Nor took from that dwelling the Duke of the Geats, save only the head of the hilt withal, blazoned with jewels. The blade had melted, burned with the bright sword. Her blood was so hot, so poisoned, the hell sprite who perished within there. Soon he was swimming, who safe now in combat, downfall of demons, updove through the flood. The clashing waters were cleansed now, waste of waves, where the wandering fiend her life days left, this lapsing world. Swam then to strand the sailor's refuge, sturdy in spirit, of sea booty glad, of burden brave he bore with him. Went then to greet him, and God they thanked, the Thane band, choice of their chieftain blithe, that safe and sound they could see him again. Soon from the hardy one helmet and armor deftly they doffed. Now drowsed the mare, water neath welkin, with war blood stained. Forth they fared by the footpaths thence, merry at heart, the highways measured, well-known roads. Courageous men carried the head from the cliff by the sea, an arduous task for all the band, the firm in flight, since 4 were needed on the shaft off Slaughter, strenuously to bear to the gold hall Grendel's head. So presently to the palace their foreman fearless, 14 Geats marching came. Their master of clan, mighty amid them, the meadow ways trod, strode then within the sovereign Thane, fearless in fight, of fame renowned, hardy hero, Hrothgar to greet. And next by the hair into hall was borne Grendel's head, where the henchmen were drinking, and awed a clan and queen alike. A monster of marvel, the men looked on. Chapter 24. Beowulf spake, Bairn of Ecgtheow, Lo now, this sea booty, son of Healfdene, lord of Scyldings, we've lustily brought thee, sign of glory thou seest here. Not lightly did I with my life escape, in war under water this work I essayed with endless effort, and even so my strength had been lost had the Lord not shielded me. Not a whit could I with ranting do in work of war, though the weapon is good. Yet a sword of the sovereign of men vouchsafed me to spy on the wall there in splendor hanging. Old, gigantic, how oft he guides the friendless wight. And I fought with that brand, felling in fight, since fate was with me, the house's wardens. That war sword then all burned, bright blade, when the blood gushed o'er it, battle sweat hot, but the hilt I brought back from my foes. So avenged I their fiendish deeds, deathfall of Danes, as was due and right. And this is my hest, that in Helrat now safe thou canst sleep with thy soldier band, and every thane of all thy folk, both old and young, no evil fear, Scyldings' lord, from that sight again, aught ill for thy earls, as erst thou must. Then the golden hilt, for that grey-haired leader, hoary hero, in hand was laid, giant wrought, old, so owned and enjoyed it, after downfall of devils, the Danish lord. Wondersmith's work, since the world was rid of that gem-souled fiend, the foe of God, murder-marked, and his mother as well. Now it passed into power of the people's king. Best of all that the oceans bound, who have scattered their gold o'er Scandia's isle. Hrothgar spake, the hilt he viewed, heirloom old, where they etched the rise of the far-off fight when the floods o'erwhelmed, raging waves, the race of giants, fearful their fate. A folk estranged from God eternal, whence guerdon due in the waste of the waters a wielders paid them. So on the guard of shining gold and runic staves it was rightly said, for whom the serpent-traced sword was wrought, best of blades in bygone days, and the hilt went wound. The wise one spake, son of Healfdene, silent were all. Lo, so may he say who sooth and right follows midfolk, of fair times mindful, a land warden old, that this earl belongs to the better breed. So borne aloft thy fame must fly, O friend my Beowulf, far and wide o'er folkstead many, firmly thou shalt all maintain, mighty strength with mood of wisdom. Love of mine will I assure thee, as a while ago I promised thou shalt prove a stay in future and far off years to folk of thine, to the heroes a help. Was not Hermod thus to offspring of Ecgwela, honor Scyldings, nor grew for their grace, but for grisly slaughter, for doom of death to the Danishmen. He slew wrath-swollen his shoulder comrades, companions at board. So he passed alone, chieftain haughty from human cheer. Through him the Maker with might endowed, delights of power, and uplifted high above all men, yet blood fierce his mind, his breast hoard grew. No bracelets gave he to Danes as was due. He endured all joyless strain of struggle and stress of woe, long feud with his folk. Here find thy lesson, of virtue advise thee, this verse I have said for thee. Wise from lapsed winters, wondrous seems how to sons of men, Almighty God in the strength of his spirit sendeth wisdom, estate, high station, he swayeth all things. Whiles he ladeth right lustily fair the heart of the hero of high-born race, and seat ancestral assigns him bliss, his folk's sure fortress and feudal hold, puts in his power great parts of the earth, empire so ample that end of it this winter of wisdom weeneth none. So he waxes in wealth, now wise can harm him illness or age, no evil cares shadow his spirit, no sword hate threatens from ever an enemy, all the world wins at his will, no worse he knoweth, till all within him obstinate pride waxes and wakes, while the warden slumbers. The spirit's sentry sleep is too fast which masters his might, and the murderer nears, stealthily shooting the shafts from his bow. Chapter 25. Under harness his heart then is hit indeed by sharpest shafts, and no shelter avails from foul behest of the hellish fiend. Him seems too little what long he possessed. Greedy and grim, no golden rings he gives for his pride, the promised future forgets he and spurns, with all God has sent him, wonder wielder of wealth and fame. Yet in the end it ever comes, that the frame of the body fragile yields, fated falls, and there follows another who joyously the jewels divides, the royal riches, nor recks of his forebear. Ban then such baleful thoughts, Beowulf dearest, best of men, and the better part choose, profit eternal. And temper thy pride, warrior famous. The flower of thy might lasts now a while, but ere long it shall be that sickness or sword thy stealth shall minish, or fang of fire, or flooding billow, or bite of blade, or brandish spear, or odious age, where the eyes to clear beam wax dull and darken. Death even thee in haste shall o'erwhelm, thou hero of war. So the ring Danes these half years 100 I ruled, wielded neath welkin, and warded them bravely from mighty ones many o'er middle earth, from spear and sword, till it seemed for me no foe could be found under fold of the sky. Lo, sudden the shift! To me seated secure came grief for joy when Grendel began to harry my home, the hellish foe. For those ruthless raids unresting I suffered heart sorrows heavy. Heaven be thanked, Lord eternal, for life extended, that I on this head all hewn and bloody after long evil with eyes may gaze. Go to the bench now, be glad at banquet, warrior worthy. A wealth of treasure at dawn of day be dealt between us. Glad was the Geats' lord, going betimes to seek his seat at the sage commanded. Afresh, as before, for the famed in battle, for the band of the hall, was a banquet dight nobly anew. The night helm darkened dusk o'er the drinkers, the doughty ones rose. For the hoary-headed would hasten to rest, age scielding, and eager the Geat, shield fighter sturdy, for sleeping yearned. Him wonder-weary warrior guest from far, a hall thane heralded forth, who by custom courtly cared for all needs of a thane, as in those old days warrior wanderers wont to have. So slumbered the stout heart. Stately the hall rose gabled and gilt where the guest slept on, till a raven black the rapture of heaven, blithe heart boded. Bright came flying, shine after shadow, the swordsmen hastened, athelings all were eager homeward forth to fare, and far from thence the great-hearted guest would guide his keel. Bade then the hardy one, Hrunting be brought to the son of Ecglaf, the sword bade him take, excellent iron, and uttered his thanks for it, quoth that he counted it keen in battle, war-friend, winsome, with words he slandered not, edge of the blade. 'Twas a big-hearted man. Now eager for parting, and armored at point warriors waited, while went to his host, that darling of Danes, the doughty atheling, to high seat hastened, and Hrothgar greeted. Chapter 26. Beowulf spake, Baron of Ecgtheow, Lo, we seafarers say our will, far come men, that we fain would seek Ecgleo now. We here have found hosts to our heart, thou hast harbored us well. If ever on earth I am able to win me more of thy love, O Lord of men, aught anew, than I now have done, for work of war I am willing still. If it come to me ever across the seas that neighbor foemen annoy and fright thee, as they that hate thee erewhile have used, thousands then of thanes I shall bring, heroes to help thee. Of Hygelac I know, ward of his folk, that, though few his years, the lord of the Geats, will give me aid by word and by work, that well I may serve thee. Wielding the war wood to win thy triumph, and lending thee might when thou lackest men. If thy Hrothgar should come to court of Geats, a sovereign son, he will surely there find his friends. A far-off land each man should visit who vaunts him brave. Him then answering, Hrothgar spake, These words of thine the wisest God sent to thy soul. No sager counsel from so young in years ere yet have I heard. Thou art strong of main, and in mind art wary, art wise in words. I ween indeed if ever it hap that Hrothgar's heir by spear be seized, by souled grim battle, by illness or iron, thine elder and lord, people's leader, and life be thine. No seemlier man will the sea Geats find at all to choose for their chief and king. For Horgords and heroes, if thou wilt thy kinsman's kingdom, thy keen mind pleases me, the longer the better, Beowulf loved. Thou hast brought it about that both our peoples, son of the Geat and spear-Dane folk, shall have mutual peace, and from murderous strife, such as once they waged, from war refrain. Long as I rule this realm so wide, let our hordes be common, let heroes with gold each other greet o'er the gannet's bath, and the ringed prow bear o'er whirling waves, tokens of love. I trow my landfolk towards friends and foe are firmly joined, and honor they keep in the olden way. To him in the whole then, Healfdane's son, give treasures 12, and the trust of earls bade him fare with the gifts to his folk beloved, hail to his home, and in haste return. Then kissed the king of kin renowned, Scyldings' chieftain, that choicest thane, and fell on his neck. Fast flowed the tears of the hoary-headed. Heavy with winters he had chances twain, but he clung to this, that each should look on the other again, and hear him in hall. Was this hero so dear to him? His breast's wild billows he baned in vain, save in his soul a secret longing locked in his mind, for that loved man burned in his blood. Then Beowulf strode, glad of his gold gifts, the grass plot o'er warrior blithe. The wave roamer bode, riding at anchor, its owner awaiting. As they hastened onward, Hrothgar's gift they lauded at length. 'Twas a lord unpeered, every way blameless, till age had broken. It spareth no mortal his splendid might. Chapter 27. Came now to Ocean the ever-courageous hardy henchmen, their harness bearing, woven war sarks. The warden marked, trusty as ever, the earl's return. From the height of the hill no hostile words reached the guest as he rode to greet them. But welcome, he called to that welder clan, as the sheen-mailed spoilers to ship marched on. Then on the strand with steeds and treasure and armor, their roomy and ring-dight ship was heavily laden. High its mast rose over Hrothgar's hoarded gems. A sword to the boat guard Beowulf gave, mounted with gold. On the mead bench, since he was better esteemed, that blade possessing heirloom old. Their ocean keel boarding, they drove through the deep, and Daneland left. A sea cloth was set, a sail with ropes, firm to the mast. The frud timbers moaned, nor did wind over billows that wave simmer blow across from her course. The craft sped on, foam-necked it floated forth o'er the waves, keel firm bound over briny currents, till they got them sight of the Geatish cliffs, home-known headlands. High the boat, stirred by winds, on the strand updrove. Helpful at haven the harbor guard stood, who long already for loved companions by the water had waited and watched afar. He bound to the beach a broad-bosomed ship, with anchor bands lest ocean billows that thrusty timber should tear away. Then Beowulf bade them bear the treasure, gold and jewels. No journey far was it thence to go to the giver of rings, Hygelac Hrothling. At home he dwelt by the sea wall close, himself and clan. Haughty that house, a hero king, high the hall, the Hygid, bright young, wise and wary. Though the winters few in those fortress walls, she had found a home. Hera's daughter, nor humble her ways, nor guarded she gifts to the Geatish men of precious treasure. Not Treath's pride showed she, folk queen famed, or that fell deceit. Was none so daring that durst make bold, save her lord alone. Of the liegemen dear, that lady full in the face to look, but forged fetters he found his lot, bonds of death. And brief the respite, soon as they seized him, his sword doom was spoken. and the burnished blade a baleful murder proclaimed and closed. No queenly way for woman to practice, though peerless she, that the weaver of peace from warrior dear by wrath and lying his life should reave. But Hemming's kinsmen hindered this, for over their ale men also told that of these folk horrors fewer she wrought onslaughts of evil after she went, gold-decked bride, to the brave young prince, Atheling haughty, and Offa's hall, o'er the fallow flood at her father's bidding safely sought, where since she prepared royal, throned, rich in goods, fain of their fair life fate had sent her, and leal in love to the lord of warriors. He of all heroes I heard of ever from sea to sea, of the sons of earth, most excellent seemed. Hence Offa was praised for his fighting, and feeing by far-off men the spear-bold warrior. Wisely he ruled over his empire. Eomar woke to him. Help of heroes, Hemming's kinsman, grandson of Geirmund, grim in war. Chapter 28. Hastened the hardy one, henchman with him, sandy strand of the sea to tread, and widespread ways. The world's great candle, sun shone from south. They strode along with sturdy steps to the spot they knew, where the battle king young, his burg within, slayer of Oginthau, shared the rings, shelter of heroes. To Hygelac Beowulf's coming was quickly told, that there in the court the clansman's refuge, the shield companions sound and alive, hail from the hero play homeward strode. With haste in the hall by highest order, room for the rovers was readily made. By his sovereign he sat, come safe from battle, kinsman by kinsman. His kindly lord he first did greeted in gracious form, with manly words. The mead dispensing came through the high hall Hereth's daughter, winsome to warriors, wine cup bore to the hands of the heroes. Hygelac then his comrade fairly with question plied in the lofty hall, sore longing to know what manner of sojourn the sea-geats made. What came of thy quest, my kinsman Beowulf, when thy yearning suddenly swept thee yonder battle to seek o'er the briny sea combat in Heorot? Hrothgar couldst thou aid at all, the honored chief, in his wide-known woes? The wave of care my sad heart seethed, I sore mistrusted my loved one's venture. Long I begged thee by no means to seek that slaughtering monster, but suffer the South Danes to settle their feud themselves with Grendel. Now God be thanked that safe and sound I can see thee now. Beowulf spake, the Baron of Ecgtheow. 'Tis known and unhidden, Hygelac lord, to many men that meeting of ours, struggle grim between Grendel and me, which we fought on the field where full too many sorrows he wrought for the Scylding victors, evil unending. These all I avenged. No boast can be from breed of Grendel any on earth, for that uproar at dawn, from the longest lived of the loathsome race and fleshly fold. But first I went Hrothgar to greet in the hall of gifts, where Healfdane's kinsman, high renowned, soon as my purpose was plain to him, assigned me a seat by his son and heir. The liegemen were lusty. My life days never such merrymen over mead and hall have I heard under heaven. The high-born queen, people's peace-bringer, passed through the hall, cheered the young clansmen, clasps of gold, ere she sought her seat, to sundry gave. Off to the heroes, Hrothgar's daughter, to earls in turn, the ale cup tendered. She whom I heard these hall companions, Freywaru name, when fretted gold she proffered the warriors. Promised is she, gold-decked maid, to the glad son of Froda. Sage this seems to the Scylding's friend. Kingdom's keeper, he counts it wise that woman to wed, sow and ward off feud, store of slaughter. But seldom ever when men are slain does the murder spear sink but briefest while, though the bride be fair. Nor happily will like it the Haethelbord lord, and as little each of his liegemen all, when a thane of the Danes in that doughty throng goes with the lady along their hall, and on him the old-time heirlooms glisten hard and ring-decked, Haethelbard's treasure, weapons that once wielded fair until they lost at the linden play, liegemen leal and their lives as well. Then, over the ale, on this heirloom gazing, some ash-wielder old who has all in mind that spear doth of men, he is stern of mood, heavy at heart, and the hero young tests the temper and tries the soul, and war-hate wakens with words like these. Canst thou not, comrade, ken that sword which to the fray thy father carried in his final feud, neath the frightening mask, dearest of blades, when the Danish slew him and wielded the war place on Withergild's fall, after havoc of heroes, those hardy Scyldings? Now the son of a certain slaughtering Dane, proud of his treasure, paces this hall, joys in the killing, and carries the jewel that rightfully ought to be owned by thee. Thus he urges and eggs him all the time with keenest words, till occasion offers that Hrothgar's thane, for the father's deed, after bite of brand in his blood must slumber, losing his life. But that liegeman flies living away for the land he kens, and thus be broken on both their sides oaths of the earls, when Ingild's breast wells with war-hate, and wife-love now after the care-billows cooler grows. So I hold not high the Heathbard's faith due to the Danes, or their during love and pact of peace, but I pass from that, turning to Grendel, O giver of treasure, and saying in full how the fight resulted, hand fray of heroes. When heaven's jewel had fled o'er far fields, that fierce sprite came, night foe savage, to seek us out, where safe and sound we sentried the hall. To Hansio then was that harassing deadly, his fall there was fated. He first was slain, girded warrior, Grendel on him, turned murderous mouth on our mighty kinsman, and all the brave man's body devoured. Yet none the earlier empty-handed would the bloody-toothed murderer mindful of bale outward go from the gold-decked hall, but me he attacked, and his terror of might with greedy hand grasped me. A glove hung by him, wide and wondrous, wound with bands, and in artful wise it all was wrought by devilish craft of dragon skins. Me therein, an innocent man, the fiendish foe, was fain to thrust with many another. He might not so when all angrily uprighted stood. 'Twere long to relate how that land destroyer I paid in kind for his cruel deeds, yet there, my prince, this people of thine got fame by my fighting. He fled away, and a little space his life preserved, but there stayed behind him his stronger hand, left at Heorot. Heart-sick thence on the floor of the ocean that outcast fell. Me for this struggle of the Scyldings' friend paid in plenty with plates of gold, with many a treasure, when morn had come, and we had all the banquet board sat down. Then was song and glee, the grey-haired Scyldings much tested, told of the times of yore, whiles the hero his harp bestirred would of delight. Now lays he chanted of sooth and sadness, or set aright legends of wonder, the wide-hearted king. Or for years of his youth he would yearn at times for strength of old struggles, now stricken with age. Hoary hero, his heart surged full when wise with winters he wailed their flight. Thus in the hall, the whole of them that day at ease were feasted, till fell o'er earth another night. Anon fully rested in greed and vengeance, Grendel's mother set forth all doleful. Dead was her son, through war-hate of wedders, now woman monstrous, with furry fellow foeman she slew, avenged her offspring. From Aesher, old, loyal counselor, life was gone. Nor might they in when morning broke, those Danish people, their death-done comrade burned with brands, on balefire lay the man they mourned. Under mountain stream she had carried the corpse with cruel hands, for Hrothgar that was the heaviest sorrow of all that had laden the lord of his folk. The leader then, by thy life, besought me, sad was his soul, in the sea waves' coil to play the hero and hazard my being for glory of prowess. My guerdon he pledged. I then in the waters, 'tis widely known, that sea-floor guardian savage found. Hand to hand there a while we struggled, billows welled blood, in the briny hall her head I hewed with a hardy blade from Grendel's mother, and gained my life, though not without danger. My doom was not yet. Then the haven of heroes, Halfdane's son, gave me and Gerdan great gifts of price. Chapter 29. So held this king to the customs old, that I wanted for naught in the wage I gained, the meed of my might. He made me gifts, Halfdane's heir, for my own disposal. Now to thee, my prince, I proffer them all, gladly give them. Thy grace alone can find me favor. Few indeed have I of kinsmen, save Hygelac thee. Then he bade him bear him the boar-head standard, the battle-helm high, the breastplate grey, the splendid sword, then spake in form. Me this war-gear the wise old prince Hrothgar gave, and his hest he added, that its story be straightway said to thee. A while it was held by Hrothgar king, for a long time lord of the land of Scyldings, yet not to his own son the sovereign left it, to daring Hrothgar, dear as he was to him, his harness of battle. Well, hold thou it all, and I heard that soon passed o'er the path of this treasure. All apple fallow, 4 good steeds, each like the others, arms and horses he gave to the king. So should kinsmen be, not weave one another the net of wiles, or with deep-hid treachery death contrive for neighbor and comrade. His nephew was ever by hardy Hygelac held full dear, and each kept watch o'er the other's weal. I heard too the necklace of Hygad he presented, wonder-wrought treasure, which Wealhtheow gave him, sovereign's daughter. 3 steeds he added, slender and saddle gay. Since such gifts the gem gleamed bright on the breast of the queen. Thus showed his strain the son of Ecgtheow, a man remarked for mighty deeds and acts of honor. At ale he slew not comrade or kin, nor cruel his mood, though of sons of earth his strength was greatest, a glorious gift that God had sent the splendid leader. Long was he spurned, and worthless by Geatish warriors held. Him at mead the master of clans failed full oft to favor at all. Slack and shiftless the strong men deemed him, profitless prince, but payment came to the warrior honored for all his woes. Then the bulwark of earls bade bring within hardy chieftain Hrethel's heirloom garnished with gold. No Geat ever knew in shape of sword a statelier prize. The brand he laid in Beowulf's lap, and of hides assigned him 7,000 with house and high seat. They held in common land, alike by their line of birth, inheritance, home, but higher the king because his rule o'er the realm itself. Now further it fell with the flight of years, with harrying horrid, that Hygelac perished, and Hrethgar too, by hewing of swords, under the shield wall slaughtered lay. When him at the van of his victor folk sought hardy heroes, Hethio Skilflings, in arms o'erwhelming, Herr Eric's nephew. Then Beowulf came as king this broad realm to wield, and he ruled it well 50 winters, a wise old prince, warding his land until one began in the dark of night a dragon to rage. In the grave on the hill a hoard it guarded, in the stone barrow steep, a straight path reached it unknown to mortals. Some man, however, came by chance that cave within to the heathen hoard. In hand he took a golden goblet, nor gave he it back, stole with it away, while the watchers slept, by thievish wiles. For the warden's wrath, prince and people must pay betimes. Chapter 30. That way he went with no will of his own, in danger of life, to the dragon's hoard, but for pressure of peril, some prince's thane. He fled in fear of that fatal scourge, seeking shelter, a sinful man, and entered in. At the awful sight tottered that guest, and terror seized him. Yet the wretched fugitive rallied e'en from flight and fear ere he fled away, and took the cup from the treasure hoard. Of such besides there was store enough, heirlooms old, the earth below, which some earl forgotten in ancient years, left the last of his lofty race, heedfully there had hidden away dearest treasure. For death of yore had hurried all hence, and he alone, left to live, the last of the clan, weeping his friends, yet wished to bide warding the treasure, his one delight, though brief his respite. The barrow, new ready, to strand and sea waves stood anear. Hard by the headland, hidden and closed, there laid within it his lordly heirlooms, and heaped hoard of heavy gold, that warden of rings. Few words he spake. Now hold thou earth, since heroes may not what earls have owned. Lo, erst from thee brave men brought it, but battle death seized and cruel killing my clansmen all, robbed them of life and a liegeman's joys. None have I left to lift the sword, or to cleanse the carven cup of price, beaker bright. My brave are gone, and the helmet hard, all haughty with gold, shall part from its plating. Polishers sleep who could brighten and burnish the battle mask, and those weeds of war that were wont to brave over bicker and shields, the bite of steel, rust with their bearer. The ringed mail fares not far with famous chieftain at sight of hero. No harp's delight, no glee wood's gladness, no good hawk now flies through the hall, nor horses fleet stamp in the burgstead. Battle and death, the flower of my race, have reft away. Mournful of mood thus he moaned his woe, alone, for them all, The unblithe wept by day and by night, till death's fell wave o'erwhelmed his heart. His hoard of bliss that old ill-doer open found, who, blazing at twilight, the barrows haunteth, naked foe, dragon flying by night, folded in fire, the folk of earth dread him sore. 'Tis his doom to seek hoard in the graves, and heathen gold to watch. Many wintered, nor wins he thereby. Powerful this plague of the people thus held the house of the hoard in earth 300 winters, till one aroused wrath in his breast to the ruler bearing that costly cup, and the king implored for bond of peace. So the barrow was plundered, borne off was booty. His boon was granted, that wretched man, and his ruler saw first time what was fashioned in far-off days. When the dragon awoke, new woe was kindled, o'er the stone he snuffed. The stark heart found footprint of foe who so far had gone in his hidden craft by the creature's head. So may the undoomed easily flee evils and exile, if only he gain the grace of the wielder. That warden of gold o'er the ground went seeking, greedy to find the man who wrought him such wrong in sleep. Savage and burning the barrow he circled all without, nor was any there, none in the waste. Yet war he desired, was eager for battle. The barrow he entered, sought the cup, and discovered soon that some of the mortals had searched his treasure, his lordly gold. The guardian waited, ill enduring, till evening came. Boiling with wrath was the barrow's keeper, and fain with flame the foe to pay for the dear cup's loss. Now day was fled as the worm had wished, but its wall no more was it glad to bide, but burning flew folded in flame. A fearful beginning for sons of the soil, and soon it came in the doom of their lord to a dreadful end. Chapter 31. Then the baleful fiend its fire belched out, and bright homes burned. The blaze stood high, all landsfolk frightening. No living thing would that loathly one leave as aloft it flew. Wide was dragon's warring seen, its fiendish fury far and near, as the grim destroyer those Geatish people hated and hounded. To hidden lair, to its hoard it hastened at hint of dawn. Folk of the land it had lapped in flame with bale and brand, and its barrow it trusted, its battling and bulwarks. That boast was vain. To Beowulf then the bale was told quickly and truly, the king's own home of buildings the best, and brand waves melted, the gift throne of Geats. To the good old men sad in heart 'twas heaviest sorrow. The sage assumed that his sovereign God he had angered, breaking ancient law, and embittered the Lord. His breast within with black thoughts welled, as his wont was never. The folk's own vastness that fiery dragon with flame had destroyed, and the stronghold all washed by waves. But the warlike king, prince of the waders, plotted vengeance. Warriors bulwark, he bade them work all of iron, the earl's commander, a war shield wondrous. Well he knew that forest wood against fire were worthless, lended could aid not. Atheling brave, he was fated to finish his fleeting life, his days on earth, and the dragon with him, though long it had watched o'er the wealth of the hoard. Shame he reckoned it, sharer of rings, to follow the flyer afar with a host, a broad-flung band. Nor the battle feared he, nor deemed he dreadful the dragon's warring, its vigor and valor, ventures desperate he had passed a plenty, and perils of war, contest crashed since, conqueror proud, Hrothgar's hall he had wholly purged, and in grapple had killed the kin of Grendel, loathsome breed. Not least was that of hand-to-hand fights where Hygelac fell, when the ruler of Geats in rush of battle, lord of his folk in Frisian land, son of Hrothgar, by sword draughts died, by bands down beaten. Thence Beowulf fled through the strength of himself and his swimming power, though alone, and his arms were laden with 30 coats of mail when he had come to the sea. Nor yet might Hetwaras haughtily boast their craft of contest, who carried against him shields to the fight, but few escaped from strife with the hero to seek their homes. Then swam over ocean Ecgtheow's son, lonely and sorrowful, seeking his land, when Hygad made him an offer of hoard and realm, rings and royal seat, reckoning not the strength of her son to save their kingdom from hostile hordes. After Hygelac's death, No sooner for this could the stricken ones in any wise move that Aethling's mind over young Hrothgar's head as lord and ruler of all the realm to be, yet the hero upheld him with helpful words, aided in honor till older grown. He wielded the Wiedergeats. Wondering exiles sought him o'er seas, the son of Hrothgar, who had spurned the sway of the Skilfing's helmet, the bravest and best that broke the rings in Swedish land, of the Sea King's line, haughty hero, hence Hrothgar's end. For shelter he gave them, sword death came, the blades fell blow to Baron of Hygelac, but the son of Oguntheow sought again house and home when Hrothgar fell, leaving Beowulf lord of Geats, and a gift seat's master, a good king he. Chapter 32. The fall of his lord he was fain to requite in after days, and to Edgils he proved friend to the friendless, and forces sent over the sea to the son of Hrothgar, weapons and warriors. Well repaid he those carapaths cold when the king he slew. Thus safe through struggles the son of Ecgtheow had passed a plenty, through perils dire, with daring deeds, till this day was come that doomed him now with the dragon to strive. With comrades 11 the lord of Geats, swollen in rage, went seeking the dragon. He had heard whence all the harm arose and the killing of clansmen. That cup of price on the lap of the Lord had been laid by the finder. In the throng was this 1/13th man, starter of all the strife and ill, care-laden captive. Cringing thence forced and reluctant, he led them on till he came in ken to that cavern hall. The barrow delved near billowy surges, flood of ocean. Within 'twas full of wire gold and jewels, a jealous warden, warrior trusty, the treasures held, lurked in his lair. Not light the task of entrance for any of earth-born men. Sat on the headland the hero king, spake words of hail to his hearth companions, gold friend of Geats. All gloomy his soul, wavering, death-bound, weird, full nigh, stood ready to greet the gray-haired man, to seize his soul hoard, sunder apart life and body. Not long would be the warrior spirit enwound with flesh. Beowulf spake, the Baron of Ecgtheow. Through store of struggles I strove in youth, mighty feuds, I mind them all. I was 7 years old when the sovereign of rings, friend of his folk, from my father took me, had me and held me, Hrothgar the king, with food and fee, faithful in kinship. Ne'er, while I lived there, he loathier found me, baron in the burg, than his birthright sons, Hyrbild and Heathkin and Hygelac mine. For the eldest of these, by unmeet chance, by kinsman's deed, was the deathbed strewn. When Heathkin killed him with horny bow, his own dear liege lay low with an arrow, missed the mark, and his mate shot down. One brother the other, with bloody shaft, of fearless fight, and of fearful sin. Horror to Hrothgar, yet, hard as it was, unavenged must the Aethling die. Too awful it is for an aged man to bide and bear, that his bairn so young rides on the gallows. A rhyme he makes, sorrow song, for his son there hanging, as rapture of ravens. No rescue now can come from the old disabled man. Still he is minded, as morning breaks, of the heir gone elsewhere. Another he hopes not he will bide to see his burg within, as ward for his wealth. Now the one is found doom of death that the deed incurred. Forlorn he looks on the lodge of his son, wine hall waste, and wind-swept chambers reft of revel. The rider sleepeth, the hero far hidden. No harp resounds, in the courts no wassail, as once was heard. Chapter 33. Then he goes to his chamber, a grief song chants alone for his lost. Too large all seems, homestead and house, so the helmet of Wheelers hid in his heart for Hyrbild waves of woe. No way could he take to avenge on the slayer slaughter so foul, nor e'en could he harass that hero at all with loathing deed, though he loved him not, and so for the sorrow his soul endured, men's gladness he gave up and God's light chose. Lands and cities he left his sons, as the wealthy do, when they went from earth. There was strife and struggle twixt Swede and Geat. O'er the width of waters war arose, hard battle horror, when Hrothgar died, and Oguntheow's offspring grew, strife keen, bold, nor brooked o'er the seas pact of peace, but pushed their host to harass and hatred by Hrothgar. Men of my folk for that feud had vengeance, for a woeful war, 'tis widely known, though one of them bought it with blood of his heart, a bargain hard, for Hicthian proved fatal in fray, for the first of Geats at morn, I heard was the murderer killed by kinsman for kinsman, with clash of sword. When Ogenthiel met Irofor there, wide split the war helm, Wain he fell, hoary skilfing. The hand that smote him of feud was mindful, nor flinched from the death blow. For all that he gave me my gleaming sword repaid him at war. Such power I wielded, for lordly treasure, with land he entrusted me, homestead and house. He had no need from Swedish realm, or from Spear-Dane folk, or from men of the gifts to him help. Some warrior worse for wage to buy, ever I fought in the front of all, soul to the fore, and so shall I fight when I bide in life, and this blade shall last that early and lathe hath loyal proved, since for my doubtiness de Greffen fell, slain by my hand, the Hugest champion. Nor fared he thence to the Frisian king with the booty back, the breast adornments, but slain in struggle that standard-bearer fell, Atheling brave. Not with blade was he slain, but with his bones were broken by brawny grip, his heart waves stilled. The sword edged now, hard blade in my hand, for the horde shall strive. Beowulf spake, and a battle vow made, his last of all. I have lived through many wars in my youth, now once again, old folk defender, feud will I seek, do doughty deeds. If the dark destroyer forth from his cavern come to fight me, then hailed he the helmeted heroes all, for the last time greeting his liegemen dear, comrades of war. I should carry no weapon, no sword to the serpent, if sure I knew how, with such enemy, else my vows I could gain as I did in Grendel's day. But fire in this fight I must fear me now, and poisonous breath, so I bring with me breastplate and board from the barrow's keeper. No foot-breadth flee I. One fight shall end our war by the walls, as weird allots all mankind's master. My mood is bold, but forbears to boast o'er this battling flyer. Now abide by the barrow, ye breastplate mailed, ye heroes in harness, which of us twain better from battle rush bear his wounds? Wait ye the finish, the fight is not yours, nor meet for any but me alone to measure might with this monster here, and play the hero. Hardly I shall win that wealth, or war shall seize, cruel killing, your king and lord. Up stood then with shield and sturdy champion, stayed by the strength of his single manhood, and hardy neath helmet his harness bore, under cleft of the cliffs, no coward's path. Soon spied by the wall that warrior chief, survivor of many a victory field, where foemen fought with furious clashings in arch of stone, and within a stream that broke from the barrow. The brooklet's wave was hot with fire, the horde that way he never could hope unharmed to near, or endure those deeps for the dragon's flame. Then let from his breast, for he burst with rage, the Wiedergeet prince a word outgo, stormed the stark heart, stern went ringing, and clear his cry neath the cliff rocks gray. The horde guard heard a human voice, his rage was enkindled. No respite now for pact of peace, the poison breath of that foul worm first came forth from the cave. Hot reek of flight, the rocks resounded. Stout by the stoneway, his shield he raised, lord of the Geats, against the loathed one, while with courage keen that coiled foe came seeking strife. The sturdy king had drawn his sword, not dull of edge, heirloom old, and each of the two felt fear of his foe, though fierce their mood. Stoutly stood with his shield high raised, the warrior king, as the worm now coiled together amain. The mailed one waited, now spire by spire, fast sped and glided that blazing serpent. The shield protected soul and body a shorter while for the hero king than his heart desired. Could his will have wielded the welcome respite but once in his life, but Weird denied it, and victory's honors. His arm he lifted, lord of the Geats, his grim foe smote with Atheling's heirloom. Its edge was turned brown blade on the bone, and bit more feebly than its nobler master had need of then, and his baleful stress. Then the barrow's keeper waxed full wild for that weighty blow, cast deadly flames, wide drove and far those vicious fires. No victor's glory the Geats' lord boasted, his brand had failed, naked in battle, as never it should. Excellent iron, 'twas no easy path that Ecgtheow honored ere must tread over the plain to the place of the foe, for against his will he must win a home elsewhere far, as must all men, leaving his lapsing life. Not long it was ere those champions grimly closed again. The horde guard was heartened, high heaved his breast. Once more and by peril was pressed again, enfolded in flames, the folk commander. Nor yet about him his bands of comrades, sons of Aethelings, armed stood, with warlike front. To the woods they bent them, their lives to save, but the soul of one with care was cumbered. Kinship true can never be marred in noble mind. Chapter 34. Wiglaf his name was, Wostan's son, Linden Thane loved, the lord of Skilfings, Ethair's kinsman. His king he now saw with heat under helmet hard oppressed. He minded the prizes his prince had given him, wealthy seat of the Wegmunding line, and folk rights that his father owned, not long he lingered. The linden yellow his shield he seized, the old sword he drew, as heirloom of Aenmund, earth-dwellers knew it, who was slain by the sword-edged son of Othair, friendless exile, Ersten Frey, killed by Wostan, who won for his kin brown bright helmet, breastplate ringed, old swords of Eaton's, Onella's gift, weeds of war of the warrior's thane, battle gear brave. Though a brother's child had been felled, the feud was unfelt by Onella. For winters this war gear Wostan kept, breastplate and board, till his bairn had grown, earlship to earn, as the old sire did. Then he gave him, Midgeats, the gear of battle, portion huge, when he passed from life, fair at age forth. For the first time now, with his leader lord, the liegeman young was bidden to share the shock of battle. Neither softened his soul, nor the sire's bequest weakened in war. So the worm found out when once in fight the foes had met. Wiglaf spake, and his words were sage. Sad in spirit, he said to his comrades, I remember the time when mead we took, what promise we made to this prince of ours in the banquet hall, to our breaker of rings, for gear of combat to give him requital, for hard sword and helmet, if hap should bring stress of this sort. Himself who chose us from all his army to aid him now, urged us to glory, and gave these treasures, because he counted us keen with the spear and hardy neath helm, though this hero work our leader hoped unhelped and alone to finish for us, folk defender who hath got him glory greater than all men for daring deeds. Now the day is come that our noble master has need of the might of warriors stout. Let us stride along the hero to help while the heat is about him glowing and grim. For God is my witness, I am far more fain the fire should seize along with my lord these limbs of mine. Unsuiting it seems our shields to bear homeward hence, save here we essay to fell the foe and defend the life of the Weeder's lord. I wot 'twere shame on the law of our land if alone the king of the Geatish warriors woe endured and sank in the struggle. My sword and helmet, breastplate and board, for us both shall serve. Through slaughter reek strode he to succor his chieftain, the battle helm bore, the brief words spake. Beowulf, dearest, do all bravely, as in youthful days of yore thou vowedst, that while life should last thou wouldst let no wise thy glory droop. Now, great in deeds, Aetheling steadfast, with all thy strength, shield thy life. I will stand to help thee. At the words the worm came once again, murderous monster, mad with rage. With fire billows flaming, its foes to seek, he hated men. In heat waves burned that board to the boss, and the breastplate failed to shelter at the spear thane young, yet quickly under his kinsman's shield went eager the earl, since his own was now all burned by blaze. The bold king again had mind of his glory, with might his glaive was driven to the dragon's head, blow nerfed by hate, benagling was shivered, broken in battle was Beowulf's sword, old and grey. 'Twas granted him not that ever the edge of iron at all could help him at strife. Too strong was his hand, so the tale is told, and he tried too far with strength of stroke all swords he wielded. Though sturdy their steel, they steadied him not. Then for the third time thought on its feud that folk destroyer, fire dread dragon, and rushed the hero where room allowed, battle grim burning. Its bitter teeth closed on his neck and covered him with waves of blood from his breast that welled. Chapter 35. 'Twas now, men say, in the sovereign's need that the earl made known his noble strain, craft and keenness and courage enduring. Heedless of harm, though his hand was burned, hardy-hearted he helped his kinsman. A little lower the loathsome beast he smote with sword. His steel drove in bright and burnished. That blaze began to loosen and lessen. At last the king wielded his wits again. War-knife drew, a biting blade by his breastplate hanging, and the Weeder's helm smote the worm asunder, felled the foe, flung forth its life. So had they killed it, kinsmen both, aethelings twain. Thus an earl should be in danger's day. Of deeds of valor this conqueror hour of the king was last of his work in this world. Then wound began, which that dragon of earth had erst inflicted, to swell and smart, and soon he found in his breast was boiling, baleful and deep pain of poison. The prince walked on, wise in his thought, to the wall of rock, then sat and stared at the structure of giants, where arch of stone and steadfast column upheld forever that hall and earth. Yet here must the hand of the henchman peerless lave with water his winsome lord, the king and conqueror covered with blood, with struggle spent, and unspan his helmet. Beowulf spake in spite of his hurt, his mortal wound. Full well he knew his portion now was past and gone of earthly bliss, and all had fled of his file of days, and death was near. I would fain bestow on son of mine this gear of war, were given me now that any heir should after me come of my proper blood. This people I ruled 50 winters. No folk king was there, none at all of the neighboring clans who war would wage with me with warriors' friends, and threaten me with horrors. At home I bided what fate might come, and I cared for mine own. Feuds I sought not, nor falsely swore ever an oath. For all these things, though fatally wounded, fain am I. From the ruler of man no wrath shall seize me, when life from my frame must flee away for killing of kinsmen. Now quickly go, and gaze on that horde neath the hoary rock Wiglaf loved. Now the worm lies low, sleeps heart-sore, of his spoil bereaved, and fare in haste. I would fain behold the gorgeous heirlooms, golden store, have joy in the jewels and gems, lay down softly for sight of this splendid hoard my life and the lordship I long have held. Chapter 36. I have heard that swiftly the son of Weohstan, at wish of word of his wounded king, war-sick warrior, woven mail-coat, battle-sark, bore neath the barrow's roof. Then the clansman keen, of conquest proud, passing the seat, saw store of jewels and glistening gold. The ground along by the wall were marvels, and many a vessel, in the din of the dragon, the dawn-flyer old. Unburnished bowels of bygone men, reft of richness, rusty helms of the olden age, and arm rings many wondrously woven. Such wealth of gold, booty, and borrow can burden with pride each human wight. Let him hide it who will. His glance too fell on the gold-wove banner high o'er the hoard, of handiwork noblest, brilliantly broidered. So bright its gleam, all the earth floor he easily saw, and viewed all the vessels. No vestige now was seen of the serpent, the sword had ta'en him. Then I heard the hill of its hoard was reft, old work of giants. By one alone he burdened his bosom with beakers and plate at his own good will, and the ensign took, brightest of beacons. The blade of his lord, its edge was iron, had injured deep, one that guarded the golden hoard many a year in its murder fire, spread hot round the barrow in horror billows at midnight hour, till it met its doom. Hasted the herald, the hoard so spurred him, his track to retrace. He was troubled by doubt, high-souled hero, if happily he'd find alive where he left him the lord of waiters, weakening fast by the wall of the cave. So he carried the load. His lord and king he found all bleeding, famous chief at the lapse of life. The liegeman again placed him with water, till point of word broke through the breast hoard. Beowulf spake, sage and sad, as he stared at the gold. For the gold and treasure, to God my thanks, to the Weeder of wonders, with words I say, for what I behold to heaven's Lord, for the grace that I give such gifts to my folk, or ever the day of my death be run. Now I've bartered here for booty of treasure the last of my life, so look ye well to the needs of my land. No longer I tarry, I borrow bid ye the battle feigned raise for my ashes. 'Twill shrine by the shore of the flood, to folk of mine memorial fair, on Hrone's eadland high uplifted, that Hoshen wanderers oft may hail Beowulf's barrow, as back from far they drive their keels o'er the darkling wave. From his neck he unclaps the collar of gold, valorous king to his vassal gave it, with bright gold helmet, breastplate and ring, to the youthful thane, bade him use them in joy. Thou art end and remnant of all our race, the Wegmunding name, for weird hath swept them, all my line to the land of doom. Earls in their glory, I after them go. This word was the last which the wise old man harbored in heart, ere hot death waves of balefire he chose. From his bosom fled his soul to seek the saint's reward. Chapter 37. It was heavy hap for that hero young on his lord beloved to look and find him lying on earth with life at end, sorrowful sight. But the slayer too, awful earth dragon, empty of breath, lay felled in fight, nor fain of its treasure could the writhing monster rule it more. For edges of iron had ended its days, hard and battle sharp, hammers leaving. And that flyer afar had fallen to ground, hushed by its hurt, its horde all near, no longer lusty aloft to whirl at midnight, making its merriment seen, proud of its prizes. Prone it sank by the handiwork of the hero king. Forsooth among folk but few achieve, though sturdy and strong as stories tell me, and never so daring in deed of valor, the perilous breath of a poisoned foe to brave, and to rush on the ring-board hall, whenever his watch the warden keeps bold in the barrow. Beowulf paid the price of death for that precious hoard, and each of the foes had found the end of this fleeting life. Befell ere long that the laggards in war the wood had left, troth-breakers, cowards, tinned together, fearing before to flourish a spear in the sore distress of their sovereign lord. Now in their shame their shields they carried, armor of fight where the old man lay, and they gazed on Wiglaf. Wearied he sat at his sovereign's shoulder, shieldsman good, to wake him with water, no wise it availed. Though well he wished it, and whirled no more, could he barrier life for that leader of battles, nor baffle the will of an all-wielding God. Doom of the Lord was law o'er the deeds of every man, as it is today. Grim was the answer, easy to get, from the youth of those that had yielded to fear. Wiglaf spake, the son of Weohstan. Mournful he looked on those men unloved. Who sooth will speak, can say indeed that the ruler who gave you golden rings and the harness of war in which ye stand, for he at ale-bench oftentimes bestowed on hall folk helm and breastplate, lord de liegemen, the likeliest gear which near or far he could find to give, threw away and wasted these weeds of battle on men who failed when the foemen came. Not at all could the king of his comrades in arms venture to vaunt, though the victory wielder, God gave him grace that he got revenge, sole with his sword in stress and need, to rescue his life. 'Twas little that I could serve him in struggle, yet shift I made, hopeless it seemed, to help my kinsman. Its strength ever waned, when weapon I struck that fatal foe, and the fire less strongly flowed from its head. Too few the heroes in throe of contest that thronged to our king. Now gift of treasure and girding of sword, joy of the house and home delight shall fail your folk. His freehold land every clansman within your ken shall lose and leave, when lords high-born hear afar that flight of yours, a fameless deed. Yea, death is better for liegemen all than a life of shame. Chapter 38. That battle toil bade he at Burg to announce at the ford on the cliff, where, full of sorrow, all the morning earls had sat, daring shieldsmen in doubt of twain. Would they wail as dead, or welcome home their lord beloved? Little kept back of the tidings knew, but told them all, the herald that up to the headline rode. Now the willing giver to the weeder folk in deathbed lies, the lord of Geats, on the slaughter bed sleeps by the serpent's deed. And bedside him is stretched that slayer of men with knife wounds sick, no sword availed on the awesome thing in any wise to work a wound. There Wiglaf sitteth, Weohstan's bairn, by Beowulf's side, the living earl by the other dead. And heavy of heart a head watch keeps o'er friend and foe. Now our folk may look for waging of war when once unhidden to Frisian and Frank the fall of the king is spread afar. The strife began when hot on the Hugas Hygelac fell and fared with his fleet to the Frisian land, whom there the Hetwaras humbled in war, plied with such prowess their power o'erwhelming, that the bold in battle bowed beneath it and fell in fight. To his friends nowise could that earl give treasure, and ever since the Merowings' favor had failed us wholly, nor aught expect I of peace and faith from Swedish folk. 'Twas spread afar how Angunthiel reft at Ravenswood, Haethgen Hretheling of hope and life. when the folk of Gates for the first time sought, in wanton pride of the warlike Skeeflings, soon the sage-old sire of Ohtere, ancient and awful, gave answering blow. The Sea King he slew, and his spouse redeemed, his good wife rescued, though robbed of her gold, mother of Ohtere and Onella. Then he followed his foes who fled before him, sore beset, and stole their way, bereft of a ruler, to Ravenswood. With his host he besieged there what swords had left, the weary and wounded, woes he threatened the whole night through to that hard-pressed throng. Some with the morrow his sword should kill, some would go to the gallows tree for rapture of ravens. But rescue came with dawn of day for those desperate men, when they heard the horn of Hygelac sound, tones of his trumpet. The trusty king had followed their trail with faithful band. Chapter 39. The bloody swath of Swedes and Geats and the storm of their strife were seen afar. All folk against folk the fight had weakened. The ancient king with his atheling band sought his citadel, sorrowing much. Ogintheow, Earl, went up to his burg. He had tested Hygelac's hardihood. The proud one's prowess would prove it no longer, defied no more those fighting wanderers, nor hoped for this human to save his horde, his bairn and his bride. So he bent him again, old to his earth walls. Yet after him came with slaughter for Swedes the standards of Hygelac, o'er peaceful plains and pride advancing, till Hrethelings fought in the fenced town. Then Ogintheow with edge of sword, though hoary-bearded, was held at bay, and the folk king there was forced to suffer Beowulf's anger, and ire at the king Wulf Wonrinding with weapons struck, and the chieftain's blood for that blow in streams flowed neath his hair. Nor fear felt he, stout old Skeefling, but straightway repaid in better bargain than bitter stroke, and faced his foe with fell intent. Nor swift enough was the son of Wanred answer to render the aged chief. Too soon on his head the helm was cloven. Blood bedecked, he bowed to earth and fell adown. Not doomed was he yet, and well he waxed, though the wound was sore. Then the hardy Hygelac thing, when the brother fell, his broad brand smote, giant's sword crashing through giant's helm across the shield wall, sank the king, the folk's old herdsman, fatally hurt. There were many to bind the brother's wounds and lift him, fast as fate allowed, his people to wield the place of war. But Beowulf took from Ogintheow, Earl, from other the iron breastplate, hard sword hilted, and helmet too, and the our chief's harness to Hygelac carried, who took the trappings and truly promised rich, free mid-folk, and fulfilled it so. For that grim strife gave the Geatish lord Hrethel's offspring, when home he came, to Beowulf and Wulf a wealth of treasure. Each of them had 100,000 in land and linked rings, nor a less price reckoned mend earth men such mighty deeds. And to Beowulf he gave his only daughter, in pledge of grace, the pride of his home. Such is the feud of foemen's rage, death-hate of men, so I deem it sure that the Swedish folk will seek us home for this fall of their friends, the frightening Skeeflings. When once they learn that our warrior leader lifeless lies, who land the horde ever defending from all his foes, furthered his folk's weal, finished his course, a hardy hero. Now haste is best, that we go to gaze on our Geatish lord, and bear the bountiful breaker of rings to the funeral pyre. No fragments merely shall burn with the warrior, wealth of jewels, gold untold and gained in terror, treasure at last with his life obtained. All of that booty the brand shall take, fire shall eat it. No earl must carry a memorial jewel. No maiden fair shall wreathe her neck with noble ring. Nay, sad in spirit and shorn of her gold, oft shall she pass o'er paths of exile. Now our Lord all laughter has laid aside, all mirth and revel. Many a spear mourning cold shall be clasped amain, lifted aloft, nor shall lift of harp those warriors wake. But the wane-hued raven, fain o'erfallen, his feast shall praise, and boast to the eagle how bravely he ate when he and the wolf were wasting the slain. So he told his sorrowful tidings, and little he lied, the loyal man of word or of work. The warriors rose, sad, they climbed to the cliff of eagles, went, welling with tears, to wonder to view. Found on the sand there, stretched at rest, their lifeless lord, who had lavished rings of old upon them. Ending day had dawned on the doughty one, death had seized in woeful slaughter the Weder's king. There saw they, besides, this strangest being, loathsome, lying their leader near, prone on the field. The fiery dragon, fearful fiend, with flame was scorched. Reckoned by feet, it was 50 measures in length as it lay. Aloft erewhile it had revelled by night, and anon came back, seeking its den. Now in death's sure clutch it had come to the end of its earth-hall joys. By it there stood the stroups and jars, dishes lay there, and deer-decked swords eaten with rust, as on earth's lap resting, 1,000 winters they waited there. For all that heritage huge, that gold of bygone men, was bound by a spell. So the treasure hall could be touched by none of humankind, save the heaven's king, God himself, might give whom he would, helper of heroes, the hoard to open, even such a man as seemed to him meet. Chapter 40. A perilous path it proved, he trod who heinously hid that hall within, wealth under wall. Its watcher had killed one of a few, and the feud was avenged in woeful fashion. Wondrous seems it, what manner of man of might and valor oft ends his life, when the earl no longer in mead hall may live with loving friends. So Beowulf, when that Barrow's warden he sought, and the struggle, himself knew not in what wise he should win from the world at last. For princes potent, who placed the gold with a curse to doomsday, covered it deep, so that mankind with sin, the man should be hedged with horrors and hell bonds fast, racked with plagues, who should rob their hoard. Yet no greed for gold, but the grace of heaven ever the king had kept in view. Wiglaf spake, son of Weohstan. At the mandate of one, oft warriors many sorrow must suffer, and so must we. The people's shepherd showed not aught of care for our counsel, king beloved. That guardian of gold, he should grapple not, urged we, but let him lie where he long had been, in his earth hall waiting the end of the world, the hest of heaven. This hoard is ours, but grievously gotten, too grim the fate which thither carried our king and lord. I was within there, and all I viewed, the chamber treasure when chance allowed me, and my path was made no pleasant wise, under the earth wall. Eager I seized such heap from the hoard as hands could bear, and hurriedly carried it hither back to my liege and lord. Alive was he still wielding his wits. The wise old man spake much in his sorrow, and sent you greetings, and bade that ye build, when he breathed no more, on the place of his belfire a barrow high, memorial mighty. Of men was he worthiest warrior, wide earth o'er, the while he had joy of his jewels and burg. Let us set out in haste now, the second time, to see and search this store of treasure, these wall-hid wonders, the way I show you, where gathered near ye may gaze your fill at broad gold and rings. Let it beer, soon made, be all in order when out we come, our king and captain to carry thither, man beloved, where long he shall bide safe in the shelter of sovereign God. Then the Baron of Weohstan bade command, hardy chief to heroes many that owed their homesteads, hither to bring firewood from far, o'er the folk they ruled, for the famed one's funeral. Fire shall devour and wan fumes feed on the fearless warrior who oft stood stout in the iron shower. When sped from the string, a storm of arrows shot o'er the shield wall, the shaft held firm, featly feathered, followed the barb. And now the sage young son of Weohstan 7 chose of the chieftain's thanes, and best he sought that band within, and went with these warriors, one of 8, under hostile roof, and hand one bore a lighted torch, and led the way. No lots they cast for keeping the hoard, when once the warriors sawed in hall, although without a guardian lying there lost. And little they mourned when they had hastily haled it out, dear-bought treasure. The dragon they cast the worm o'er the wall for the wave to take. The surges swallowed the shepherd of gems. Then the woven gold on the wain was laden, countless quite, and the king was born, hoary hero, to Hrone's ness. Chapter 41. Then fashioned for him the folk of Geats firm on the earth a funeral pile, and hung it with helmets and harness of war and breastplates bright as the boon he asked. And they laid amid it the mighty chieftain, heroes mourning their master dear. Then on the hill that hugest of balefires the warriors wakened. Wood smoke rose black over blaze, and blent was the roar of flame with weeping. The wind was still, till the fire had broken the frames of bones hot at the heart. In heavy mood their misery moaned they their master's death, wailing her woe, the widow old, her hair upbound, for Beowulf's death sung in her sorrow, and said full oft she dreaded the doleful days to come, death to know, and doom of battle and shame. The smoke by the sky was devoured. The folk of the Weders fashioned there on the headland a barrow broad and high, by ocean-farers far descried. In 10 days' time their toil had raised it, the battle braves' beacon, round brand of the pyre. A wall they built, the worthiest ever that wit could prompt in their wisest men. They placed in the barrow that precious booty, the rounds and the rings they had reft erewhile, hardy heroes from hoard and cave, trusting the ground with treasure of earls, gold in the earth, wherever it lies, useless to men as of yore it was. Then about that barrow the battle-keen rode, atheling born, a band of 12, lament to make, to mourn their king, chant their dirge, and their chieftain honor. They praised his earlship, his acts of prowess, worthily witnessed, and well it is that men their master friend mightily laud, heartily love, when hence he goes from life, and the body forlorn away. Thus made their mourning the men of Geatland, for their heroes passing, his hearth companions, quoth that all the kings of earth, of men he was mildest and most beloved, to his kin the kindest, keenest for praise.